Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Talking Tradesman. We are back after a small break. In fact, the biggest break I think I've had from recording. And today in the studio with me is Matt Willis, fellow painter and decorator and supporter of the podcast. First of all, Matt, thank you very much for making the effort to come in today.
No problem.
Let's talk, mate.
Let's talk then.
How does it feel to be in the seat after watching so many people sat in the seat?
It's a little bit surreal. It's like meeting a famous person, Russ.
Mate, don't, please don't. I'm far from that. It's a weird one, mate. I'm just a decorator messing around with podcasts.
Yeah.
So it's a strange position to be in. I went to the Bolton show a couple of weeks ago and sort of had a couple of people coming up and people that I didn't know coming up saying, "Oh, I've seen you." It's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird. I don't think I'll ever get used to that one. However, today's about you, mate. Let's go back. Let's start at the beginning of your journey, your story, and how far back should we go?
Child, I suppose.
Start at child. All right then, mate. Let's start with where are you from? Where did you grow up? Where did your story begin?
So although I was born in Bedford, I was brought up in a little town at the time called St Neots, which is between Bedford and Cambridge.
Okay.
So parents are from Bedford, around there, and they moved from there to St Neots when I was about 6 months. Still have one older brother, 2 years older than me.
Yeah.
So it was me, my brother, my mum, and my dad.
Quite a traditional family upbringing.
Very. They bought a house in a little estate where 4-bed detached, double garage, 2 cars on the drive. Dad went to work, mum was at home. It was it was typical, it was normal, it was a stereotypical 2.4 children set up.
The postcard family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We just didn't have the dog.
Right, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, everybody knew each other in the town. Everybody knew each other in the road that we were. We lived in a little cul-de-sac, and there was young families, wall to wall, door to door. That's what it was.
That's quite nice, though, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I suppose it was. I didn't particularly.
Yeah.
It was what it was. It was. I'm very fortunate to have had that. I know that a lot of people don't. But yeah, it was very typical. The expectation was that you would go to school, then you would go to university, you would move away, and have a lovely life with another 2.4 children and another 4-bed house and all the rest of it.
I'm guessing you didn't quite fit into that mould.
No, I did not fit into that mould at all. And I always knew that, and that was fine. But that was never going to be me. I didn't want to be that person.
I'm going to jump forward quickly just to get some information. But obviously you're painting and decorating business. How long have you been doing that?
12 years now.
Okay.
Prior to that, I did 10 years in the civil service.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I worked, now it is called HMCTS, Majesty's Courts or His Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service.
So you worked in the courts?
I did, yeah. So when I was 18, I went into that. I started off in the Employment Tribunal. And I did 10, almost 11 years there. I did various jobs within the tribunal. So again, jumping forward, I was 18, I'd left college, I needed a job, and I applied for a job at the local employment tribunal office in Bedford, and I got a job there as a clerk. So it was like an usher in court. So you were office-based during the day, and you would get your call, and you'd have to go down to take the parties into tribunal, sit in tribunal, take notes type stuff. So I did a couple of years doing that. I then, after a couple of years there, I moved to the Watford Employment Tribunal, where I managed a team. Then I managed Watford and Bedford Employment Tribunal together.
Are Watford and Bedford close?
No.
I was just thinking that, because I'm like, so Ange is from, like, or grew up or spent a long period of time around Watford.
Okay.
So I know that's like, it's very close to London, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's just outside London.
And I always thought Bedford
The
and
reason they were
was more
connected was because we shared a judiciary.
right.
So the employment tribunal judges usually came out of London, but they were assigned to Watford and Bedford, and that was their kind of patch.
Okay.
And although they're not geographically particularly close,
Yeah.
that was just the way it worked out.
Fair enough.
So I did that, and then I went back. I did that probably 4 years in Watford. Then I went back to Bedford to manage that office. Then the last 4 years I was there, I was PA to Director of Tribunals for Greater London and South East. Greater London and South East was everything from Norfolk to Brighton, but not central London. So I was his PA for 4 years, and then I took voluntary redundancy 12 years ago and thought, what am I going to do now? And that's when I got into painting and decorating.
Okay. Well, we'll go a bit more. We'll go chronological now. So I just wanted to find out how long you'd been in the trade.
Yeah, 12 years.
But we'll pull back to the childhood situation and all that kind of thing. How was like school life and that kind of thing for you?
School life for me was the worst days of my life, not the best days. Anybody that says it's the best days of your life, I will disagree with, because it wasn't for me. It was horrendous. So primary school was great, loved it. Really, really enjoyed primary school. Went up to, so we had primary and secondary. I don't know where that fits in.
I did 3-tier.
Okay.
I think most people do 2. And I speak to a few people about 3-tier and they look at me gone out.
Yeah.
But
so in Bedfordshire, where I live now, it's 3-tier.
Okay.
St Neots, where I lived, was under Cambridgeshire, which was 2-tier. So I did primary and secondary.
Yeah.
So I got to secondary school, and from the day I got there till the day I left, I was bullied the whole way through.
Really?
The whole way through. Every day. And it was horrible.
Based on where did the bullying? Because I know kids are savage, but they usually pick up on something. Like what was it? Physical? Was it verbal? What?
It wasn't so much physical. Nobody ever beat me up. It was verbal. I was always a little bit different. All my friends were girls.
Right.
And they didn't like it, and they didn't like me.
Yeah.
They picked up on everything about me. And yeah, I was that person that they didn't like.
Yeah, it's tough, mate, isn't it?
Yeah,
because
horrible,
as I say, kids can be savage, and they're a lot more brutal than what adults would be.
And I expected, and I thought that the staff, the teachers, would have my back, but they didn't. So that wasn't great.
How did you negotiate that? Like, how did you manage that? Because you're at school a long time, aren't you? So to be bullied for the duration.
Yeah, I coped with it. I didn't take it home. I had a handful of very good friends at school, and they had my back, so that was good.
That's good.
A couple of those friends were a little bit different to the norm as well. A very close friend at school, not so much at school, but very close now. Although we knew each other at school and were friends.
Let's pause there a moment to say a massive thank you to our headline sponsors, Zinza. Now, I am over the moon that Zinza have got on board to support the Talking Tradesman podcast, because genuinely, we use Zinza products on virtually every job we do in my business as a painter and decorator. Zinza are a renowned and established brand. They do things like primers, sealers, and stain block coatings, and also things like the mold and mildew resistant finishes that they produce, such as the Perma White in front of me here. Zinza are well known for their stain block and adhesion primers, such as Bin and Bullseye 123, and their new product, the Bin Aqua. Zinza's products are well known for their high performance and ease of use. They cater to both the professional and DIY market, and the Talking Tradesmen are once again over the moon to have sponsored with Zinza as our headline sponsor. Now let's get back to the episode.
So we kind of stuck together a bit, always have since.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a long time ago. I mean, I'm a lot older than I was, so it was a long time ago, and it didn't end the way I wanted it to end, and I was pushed out when I got into sixth form.
Okay.
The reason I was bullied, the reason why I was pushed out is because I'm quite openly gay. And that's how it ended.
Just, I hope you don't mind me prying on this, but you're openly gay. Have you always known that you were gay?
Yes.
So even from it's a weird one, isn't it? Because I don't know what age, I guess kids, youngsters have any kind of sexualization in their own mind. But you were always aware, even as a child.
And not just aware, I always knew 100%. So there was never any doubt in my mind at all that I would be straight.
Yeah.
Ever. It was never an option.
Which is obviously an immediate target for kids, isn't it?
I see myself as quite lucky because a lot of gay men and women don't have that. A lot of gay men, especially that I know, don't come out until their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s because of a whole host of different reasons. But I consider myself quite lucky in the fact that I did always know. It was never any other option.
So the people around you knew, your family knew?
No, yes and no. They knew. So I told my parents when I was 16.
Okay.
Which is a whole nother story, which I'm happy to tell you about. So yeah, I came out when I was 16.
Okay.
I came out to some friends at school before then, a couple of years before then, and they knew, which was fine. But yeah, telling my parents was probably, it was the worst thing I've ever had to tell them.
Well, I mean, look, while we've lifted the lid on that, we might as well go into how that was for you.
I could go and murder somebody this afternoon. Going home and telling my mum that I'd killed somebody
would have been easier.
Would never be as bad as telling them that I was gay.
So how did that go down? How was that experience?
Well, it certainly wasn't planned. So I just turned 16. I was at school. My brother had just gone off to university, so it was just me and my parents at home. It was GCSE time, so I was in the middle of taking my GCSE exams. And it was a Saturday afternoon, it was a Sunday afternoon. My dad and my brother and my family are a big cricket family. That is the sport in our family. Not that I have any interest in it, but we're a cricket family.
Yeah.
Every summer, every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we would go to the cricket. My dad would play. My mum would make the tea.
The thing with cricket, it's a whole day event, isn't it? It's not like the football 90-minute thing.
Isn't it?
It's a whole day.
So you get there at like 11, 12. You're not home till 8. So that was my summers. That was me and my brother. We were brought up on it. As my brother went to university and as I got a little bit older, I could stay at home on my own, which was brilliant because I didn't have to go. So yeah, it was just before the summer holidays. Mum and Dad had been to the cricket match and they'd come home early because it was rained off. I think it was the 27th of August. Can't tell you the year, but I could work it out. But it was the 27th of August. It was about 6 o'clock. And I was at home. I'd just made something to eat. Pissing down my rain all afternoon. They'd come home. Washing out. My mum had her washing out in the garden. She was like, "It's raining. Why haven't you brought it in?" I was 16. It's not the kind of thing you think about. They come in. Dad's doing whatever. Putting his wet cricket stuff away. Mum gets the washing in. I'm sitting in. So we had it's kitchen, and then it went into we called it the breakfast room, which is a bit middle class, but that's kind of what it was.
Nothing wrong with being middle class, so Matt. It's fine.
We sat there. I'm eating, and I think my mum subconsciously maybe knew a little bit. She wanted to question me, some stuff. So I'm sitting there eating my dinner, and she is folding up the washing, and she said, "Oh, I had a couple of close girlfriends at school." and she's quizzing me a little bit. She's saying, "Oh, maybe after your exam this week, how about whoever it was? Bring them home for dinner if they want. They want to come round. They can, spend some time." I'm thinking, I don't really want her to come back to my house. She's my mate, but. So she said, "Oh, this person, or that person," and I said, "Well, I can't remember who it was." I said, "What about that? What about this person?" She went, "Yeah, they can come too, whoever you like." "Do you like her then? Do you fancy her then?" I said, "Well, not really." And she's kind of digging a bit deeper. And this was all totally unplanned. And I'm thinking, are you trying to get it out of me? Do you know, or do you think? Do you want to ask me?
I'm sure she had a feeling. Yeah.
So I said, "Well, it doesn't have to be one of these girls that I like, does it?" She went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, it could be a boy." And I'm thinking, what am I doing? What am I saying?
Yeah.
Could be a boy. And she went, "Oh, could it?" I said, "Yeah, it could be." And she just, my mum's we're very similar people. I am the male version of my mum. And she said, "Well, are you saying that you might be gay?" And I thought, what have I done? What have you done? I don't want to do this now. It's 7 o'clock, Sunday night. I've got to go to school tomorrow for this. I don't want to do it. So I said, "Well, yeah." And she went, "But," what did she say? She said something like, "It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be gay, or you don't have to not be gay, and it's all right if," and she was in this major jumble.
Yeah.
And she said, "But you don't have to we won't tell your dad yet. We'll just keep it between me and you. It's all right, but we won't tell your dad yet." As she's saying that, he walks in. "No need to tell your dad what?" Mum looks at my dad. He thinks he's gay. And I went, "He does." And I thought, it sounds really cruel. But I thought, now I've done it, I don't want to jump back in.
Yeah.
I've got to do it now. And I looked at my dad, which sounds really cruel. And I said, "He doesn't think he is. He knows he is." And my dad, he's quite a colourful person in his face. He's never pale. And I watched him just go
Really?
completely white. And he looked at me and he looked at my mum. He turned round. He walked into the lounge, sat down in the armchair, and just looked at the telly for half an hour.
I shouldn't laugh, mate, but
it's funny.
The picture you're painting, it's almost like cartoon-like.
So my mum's going, "What are we going to do?" My dad's like, my dad, all his life, my dad was an only child, brought up in a village, worked in the motor trade from like the age of 16, 17, very male orientated. He had his boys. One had just gone to university. One's doing his exams. He's probably going to do the same.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was in absolute shock.
I think it's generational, Matt, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because, like, hand on heart, genuinely, if either one of my kids turned around and told me they were gay, I would not give a shit. I would not.
But that's because you're the age you are now.
Exactly that. The generation we grow up in now, it's so accepting of it, as it should be, you know. And there isn't that stigma. But I remember growing up, I mean, unfortunately, mate, I've got 2 weeks of my 30s left. So I'm of that generation. But I remember when, like, being at school, throwing at somebody, "You're gay," was a major insult.
Yeah.
Awful.
Awful.
And then you take it a step further to our parents' generation. And I think it's as it should be. It's progressing the way that it should be. And I guess now for any young males or females coming out as gay, it's probably the best time in history there's ever been for that. But yeah, I mean, certainly it's not all that long ago where it was a very different thing.
Absolutely.
And I know, like, you talking about the way that your parents reacted, obviously there's a lot of love between you and your parents. I would imagine it's exactly the way that I would have seen it at that time in history of the fear is, oh my God, what's he got to go through now?
So there's a couple of things that I thought at the time, I've thought about it since, and I still believe now. And especially at that time, it's totally different now. It's completely different now. But at that time, when I told them when I was 16, it's not particularly the fact that you're gay. When I told my mum and dad, I took away two things. And that was a big white wedding for their son
Mm.
and grandchildren. When I told them that, I took away those two things instantly. Because in those days, you didn't get married. Gay people didn't get married. You didn't have a wedding.
Yeah,
and they didn't have children.
That's a relatively new.
Yeah.
I don't know what year it was, but it's not been that long, has
I
it?
should know, but I can't remember on the top of my head because I'm not interested in getting married at all. It's not on my radar. So I couldn't tell you the day, the date of the year. But when I told my mum and dad, that's what I took away from them. And I think that was a lot more hard hitting for them than the fact that I was gay. Another thing that my mum said the following day was, and again, this is totally generational thing, and I totally understand why she said it. She said to me, all I can see for you from now is dark alleyways and drugs.
Really?
Because she said, and now she'll say, you need to remember that in her day, that's what it was. If you were gay, you moved to London or you moved to Brighton, you got involved in drugs, you probably got HIV. And that was what it was then. And that's what my mum saw for me then.
Yeah.
And it was up to me to try and educate her that it was never going to be like that and it was going to be different.
It's weird, actually, Matt, when you say that, because again, I'm thinking on the spot here, but it was very much, there was like the gay scene, wasn't there? But there wasn't the integration.
I hate the scene word. I hate it.
But now it's, I guess, if I were to go into a club or a pub setting or any social setting now, I would sort of look at a crowd and maybe think, maybe there's X amount of gay people, X amount of straight people. Yeah. In years gone by, it was if you went into a straight club, it was for straight people.
Absolutely.
And if you were gay, you didn't go there. You went to the gay club.
You went to your club. Absolutely.
Which is great that it's changed. Yeah. But again, it's generational.
Absolutely.
And I think you've got to point that out on these kind of conversations, because somebody who's only grown up in today's day would look at your parents and go, that's horrific. Yeah. How could they do that? What terrible people. But it's not. It's just they're a product of their generation.
Absolutely.
And their surroundings.
And now I am very happy to say they are completely different, completely accept. I mean, it took my mum probably, I always say it took my mum about 6 weeks before she was fully, really couldn't care. Took my dad about 6 months. And now they are the most genuine, supportive. I could not hope for better parents now, which is fantastic.
That's great.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
I have a friend, more of a mate, who I knew when I was probably 17, 18. I met him when I was about 17, 18. We used to go to this nightclub in Cambridge, and once a month they had the gay night, and it was called the Cotton Club. It's quite funny. And I met him there, and his dad was, you can't be. And he always said to me, I'll never tell my parents, I'll never be able to come out. And I met up with him probably 3-ish years ago. I was on holiday. I met up with him there, and I hadn't seen him for years. And I said, I want to know what happened to you, because you always said to me. And he told his mum and dad, and he had to leave. And he did the thing that my mum always feared. He left home. He went to London. He got involved in drugs, and he got HIV.
This is the thing, though, isn't it? I guess if you haven't got that support at home and you do feel pushed out that way, then you're at that. The parent's worst fear is going to manifest itself through the parent's behaviour.
Yeah, and he's great now. He's absolutely great now. But his dad was, no, not under my roof. Not going to happen. And he's probably 2 years younger than me. So it does happen. And it, unfortunately, although like you just said, things are brilliant now, and they really are, it's not 100% brilliant. There are still people who will not have it.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think that will always happen.
I mean, I think that's always going to happen with parents and kids anyway, Matt. I mean, you can take that into other things. You can take that into the pushy parent that, you know,
Mhm.
won't accept that the son doesn't like football because they're trying to manifest their inadequacies through their
Yeah,
kids.
absolutely.
And there's all these things, or, you know, for example, people like me, I might try and push my son into the building trades, but he doesn't want to be in the trades. He wants to be something else. There's always going to be
Yeah, of course.
that level of non-acceptance that your child, I guess as a parent, you just have to realise that your child is their own person in all ways, whether that comes to sexuality, career, lifestyle choices, the lot, you know. And there's always going to be those conflicts.
Luckily, my brother was the normal one in that he went to university, he got the job, he got married.
Yeah.
I mean, he divorced her, so he did have a touch of the black sheep in him then, because she was just awful. But he's now remarried and has 3 beautiful children, and that's great.
I think the divorce thing's kind of normal now, Matt, to be honest. I think you're more the black sheep if you don't get divorced.
Well, yeah,
I don't know what the stats are, but
I suppose so.
it's
Yeah,
high.
that's right. So I've kind of gone off, but going back to the whole school thing.
Yeah.
Telling my mum and dad. So told them. I mean, it was about 7 that night. I phoned my best friend at school, who I'd told 18 months previously. Phoned her. I said, "I've just told." She said, "What do you mean? You've told who what?" Because to her it was just nothing. I said, "I've just told my mum and dad." She was like, "You've told them what?" I said, "I've just told them I'm gay." She went, "Oh, fucking hell. So met her the following morning. We walked to school together because we had this exam. I think it was my last exam of my GCSEs. And she was fantastic, really supportive. And then it was a rocky summer holidays then. I was waiting for my GCSE results. My mum was, they were great. They were really good. My mum was very much, I need to go to the library and get a book because I need to learn about. I was like, "Mum, there's nothing to learn about it. The fact is, I'm attracted to men, not women, and that's it." And I was trying to tone it down. I was trying to keep it a bit. It's really not that big, but to them it was. Obviously, I get it was big, but the whole, you know, where I grew up and the whole 2.4 children thing, where everybody's household was pretty normal. All of a sudden, we weren't. To my parents, we were not normal at all. And my mum and dad didn't tell the neighbours for a long time.
That whole concept, though, that you have to tell the neighbours.
I know. Yeah, it's like you need to make a big announcement. You need to say, right, we need to know.
Just letting you know.
Yeah. It's funny because my brother was at university. He'd been there a couple of months, and there was no mobile phones then. So it was hard to communicate with. They were the glory days. Yeah. It was hard to, you know, drop someone a text or so. My mum said, "We need to tell your brother." I was like, "That's fine. You know, tell who you want. It's fine." So they phoned my brother and they said, "You need to come down back." He was I think he went to Derby University. So it wasn't down the road. It wasn't an hour away. They phoned him and said, my mum phoned him and said, "You need to come down for a couple of nights. We need to talk to you about something." So he's like,
"Oh, that's the worst, isn't it?"
Okay. So he managed to get out of my mum on the phone that it was about me. The thing that we needed to talk about was about Matt. So he's thinking, he's dying. He's not very well.
Yeah.
I've got to go home. So he comes home. I pick him up from the train station. And my brother had, and still has, much to my annoyance, he has got a big thing about, and always has had a big thing about smokers. He hates smoking. He hates cigarettes. Don't come near me with a cigarette. So I bring him home. My mum sits him down. I'm out. Right, we need to talk about Matt. And by this time, he's really seriously thinking, I'm going to die. I've got something horrifically wrong with me. And she tells him, Matt's told us he's gay. And he went, "What?" My mum was like, "Yeah, I know. It's going to take you a bit of a while to get your head around it." And he went, "What do you mean? I thought you were going to tell me that he was dying, or even worse, he'd started smoking or something." And in my brother's eyes, that would have been worth bringing him home for.
Yeah.
But to him, it was really nothing. So we got back on the train and fucked off back to university. And that was really good for them because it made them realise that actually people of my brother's age
don't give a
really
shit.
couldn't give.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And there must have been, mate. There must have been like an underlying feeling that they knew. It was just a confirmation of hearing the words.
I think parents always know. I will tell my friends now if their kids are gay or not.
Yeah.
They'll say to me, "Do you think?" And I'll go, "Is there?"
So is gaydar a real thing, Matt?
Oh,
is that a thing?
It's massive. It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. It's inbuilt in me.
Confirmed by the man in the chair.
Absolutely,
gaydar is a thing. So if anyone wants to check anyone's sexuality, Matt is available for a flat fee.
Yeah, absolutely. So I told them, I went back to school, and the dream for me was primary school teacher. That's all I wanted to be.
Okay.
All I ever had on my radar was to be a primary school teacher. So, although I didn't want to go to university, I was very university. No, I knew I kind of had to do that.
Yeah.
So we had our rocky summer holidays. I was due to go back for year 11 and 12 to do A-levels with a view to go to university. Although I really didn't want to go. I knew I had to do something along those lines to be what I wanted to be. So I got my GCSE results and I did very well. I got to do the A-levels I wanted to do. So I went back after and started my A-levels. Now, the year head at the school that I went to was called Mrs. Rowland, and she was notorious for everything. The first thing was, if you started A-levels, you completed them, you didn't drop out, and you went to university, which is just what my brother did. My brother and Mrs. Rowland got on very well because my brother was very academic,
right,
and he was very much her little pet, and she was very proud of him, and she expected me as his brother to go and do the same thing. So I was probably a month, 2 months into year 11 doing my A-levels. And they had this, they did various things at school, but if you wanted to do something along the lines of teaching, we had this thing where the year 11s could almost befriend a year 7 student who had just started at the secondary school. And if they had some difficulty with certain subjects, maths, English mainly, you could be appointed one of these kids and you would mentor them for a year until they got to year 8. So a whole bunch of us did it. And it involved that I can't even remember who I had, but I had this. So what would you be at year 7? 12, I think. I can't remember.
Well, my daughter's just leaving year 6 to go into year 7, and she'll be 12 in December.
Okay, so 11,
12, 13. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So started doing that, and I was reading. So you'd go to the school library, pick a book with this kid, get a quiet area, have a read with them, try and help them out, give them a bit of homework. It was our training to be a teacher. It was helping them.
Yeah,
did that. And I was doing 4 A-levels, and I wanted to drop one. I can't remember what I was doing. I do remember what I was doing. I was doing English language, English literature, art and design, and stereotypically art textiles or something like that. And I wanted to drop one of them and just do the 3. So if you wanted to do that, Mrs. Rowland had to be involved because there was no way you were dropping out and you couldn't drop a subject. So she had to have a meeting with my parents. So they went in and had a chat with her. And they knew by this time it was only a couple of months for me to coming out. And my mum and dad, my mum is a talker. She wants to talk to everybody about everything. She needs support. So I didn't know this, but my mum and dad had gone in and they'd told her that I'd just come out.
Okay.
So, okay, I mean, really didn't bother me. They could tell what they wanted. It didn't bother me at all. So the following day, I got home from school, and you need to bear, I can't emphasize enough how much this woman was notorious for. There was a thing, I don't know how true it was, that the school got a certain amount of money for every student that stayed.
Yeah.
It was very much like that. So anyway, I get home from school the next day, and I walk into the, I don't know why, but we had a little study as you go in the house, and school paper and school reports was very obvious. It was blue. It was like this baby blue colour in a brown envelope. I walked into the study, I don't know why I did it, and there was this letter on the blue paper in the brown envelope addressed to my mum and dad. And again, I don't know why I did it, but I opened it. It had been opened. I opened it and read it. And it said, "We met this morning about Matthew dropping out of whatever subject, full stop." The next 3 paragraphs were how my mum and dad had told her, how it was now up to my mum and dad not to tell me not to tell anybody. I wasn't allowed to tell any of my friends. I wasn't allowed to confide in any of my teachers. I had to keep it to myself for the next 2 years while I was in year 11 and year 12. I had to basically stop being myself. 3 paragraphs about it.
So just to clarify, the school sent your parents a letter essentially saying, tell Matt to not be gay.
Yes.
For the duration of him being at the school.
Yes. And then the final paragraph,
fucking hell,
which was the icing on the cake for me, was from tomorrow she had withdrawn me from coaching the younger kids. She couldn't allow it to happen anymore.
Wow.
So I took the letter. My mum was in the kitchen making dinner roll. Every mums do at that time. So I took the letter and I said, "What's this?" And she went, "That's for your dad to see when he gets home from work. You shouldn't have seen it. I'm going to talk to your dad when he gets home from work about it." And I said, "Well, just to let you know, not only am I dropping out of this A level, I'm not going back to that school anymore. I will not go. I'm not doing my A-levels anymore. I'm not going to university. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm not going." Anyway, dad comes home. We have a chat about it. And I said, "This is just completely unacceptable.
That's fucking horrific,
This cannot happen."
I mean, today, I would imagine they'd be struck off for something like that.
In a way, with the knowledge I have now, at the age I am now, I'd love it to happen because it'd be so different. It would be so different.
Yeah.
So had a chat with my mum and dad, and they said to me, "If you don't want to carry on there, we'd like you to, but if you don't want to carry on there, we understand, and reluctantly you can leave." So I was like, okay. So the next day, I took the letter with me. Showed it to a couple of friends on the way to school, and they were like, no, I can't believe it. So at this point, I mean, I was a very good boy at school. Yeah. I was very good. She was doing an assembly that morning with however many hundreds of kids. I walk in to the assembly. She stood up there, all these kids. And I walked up to her while she was taking the assembly. I said, "I need to talk to you." She hit the roof. "Who do you think you are? Go and sit outside my office. You don't interrupt my assembly." And by this point, I did not care. Yeah. I really did not care. So she comes from the assembly. "Who do you think you are interrupting me?" Anyway, go into her office. I said, "What's this?" And I handed her the letter, and she went, "That's not for you. That's not addressed to you. You shouldn't have seen it." I said, "Well, I did, and I've read it." And she said, "Well, what do you want to do about it? Because it can't be discussed here. It can't be discussed at school." And I said, this woman, you just could not leave. I thought, I'm stuck here. She's never going to let me leave. She is never going to let me leave. I am stuck here for the next 2 years. Now, do I play by her rules or do I play by my own? I had the support of all my friends, and I would have had the support of my family given it a couple of weeks. I would have convinced them that this was all right and my way was the only way. But I kind of made up my mind by then. Anyway, so I said, I've got 2 things to say to you. The first thing is, I am a puff, not a paedophile. There is a difference. And she got really embarrassed. She didn't know where to look. I said, it's true. Do you think by having private one-to-one time with these kids is going to... Do you think I'm going to do anything? And she said, you need to understand that I have to protect myself. I have to protect their parents. And the main thing is I have to protect the children. And if their parents were to find out that I had allowed somebody who is gay to sit with their child on a one-to-one basis, I could be in a lot of trouble, and so could the school. And I was like, you are now. I was like...
Just building on it, man. Jesus.
You're just making this... So I said, well, the second thing is I want to leave now. I don't want to continue with my A-levels. I do not want to be part of your school under your, you're the headmistress. I don't want to be a part of it. She said, well, once you start A-levels that you can't leave. Your brother went to university. He finished his A-levels, and that's what the plan is for you as well. As it is not the plan anymore. I'm not going to be here. So I said, and after this meeting, I'm going to go to the common room and I'm going to tell everybody not only what I am, but the conversation we've just had and what you expect me to do. And I mean, she must have been thinking, fucking hell, backfired a little bit. So she turned around to this filing cabinet and she got out this bit of paper. She goes, there's a leavers form. You need to get it signed by all your tutors, your mum or your dad, one of them. And when I've got it back, you can leave. And I was like, I didn't know what to say because I just hadn't planned for it.
Yeah.
I genuinely never thought that was going to happen. I thought, oh my God, you're letting me go. She said, you're a problem for me that I don't need. And
a problem because of your sexuality.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. 100%.
That's fucking horrific, mate. I mean, I'm sorry you went through that because that's the insinuation that you're not safe to be around children because of your sexuality is horrific.
Yeah, and that's what it was. She was married to a vicar. Not that I'm casting any aspersions.
Well, I was going to say...
I'm just saying she was married to a vicar.
Yeah, exactly. And, how many people in positions of authority who are completely heterosexual are guilty of some atrocities.
There you go. So I took the form. I walked into town where my mum worked. Again, very middle class. My mum worked in the local department store. Walked into town, told her what had happened. I said, you need to sign this form. And she signed it straight away. She said, it's fine. We need to talk about when you get home what you're going to do now, because you can't just sit on your ass. You need to do something, but you can leave. You interrupted all my tutors' classes, got them to sign it, took it back to her within about an hour, and said, here you go. There it is. Can I go now? She said, yep. So she called her deputy out of class. He was called Mr. Donnelly. A lot of people at the school thought the sun shone out of his arse. A lot of my friends still do. He was a nice chap, but she got him to escort me to the gate, just me and him. And we got to the gate and he said, you don't come here again. This is it now. You don't come and see your friends. You don't meet them at lunchtime. You don't come here again. And that was it.
How bizarre. How bizarre. Like the whole thing, mate. I mean, we've had private conversations about the education system and the institutionalization of our kids, because a lot of these schools, mate, and from what you've just said there, it sounds more like a fucking prison than a school.
Absolutely.
That really does. I mean, I went not a similar journey, obviously a very different journey to you. I did the same. I went to do my A levels. I don't know about you. Were they split at that time, AS and A2?
Yes.
Okay. So I completed my AS levels. The difference was my year head absolutely hated me because I would not conform. I did not like the adjust. So my best years at school through high school were up to GCSE and after GCSE because I wasn't one of the naughty kids. I was not compliant, but I was, I guess, mischievous, but never naughty. There was never any, I never tried to burn the school down, you know, it was just
You were
like,
a normal kid.
yeah, exactly. I used to play football where I wasn't meant to, all that kind of rubbish. GCSEs did very well, kind of flew under the radar. But then what happened was the real naughty kids, the ones that did want to burn the school down, they never went to sixth form. They all went off and went to college or went to do their apprenticeships, whatever it was they went off to do. So then me and my little circle of friends, like 3-4 of us, who did go to sixth form, we then became, we were the naughty kids because there was nobody naughtier.
Yeah.
So we weren't naughty, but yeah, and my year head was very similar, mate. She expected sixth formers to be this shining example of authority and obedience.
And I didn't fit into that.
I was the same.
We didn't fit into that for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Even to the point, you know, the wearing of a suit and all that kind of thing in sixth form. But I was actually asked at the end of my AS levels to not come back. So I completed them. And my year head, so I remember my old school, the high school, there used to be like the kids' entrance and there was the main entrance. And the main entrance had these like landscaped sort of like gardens up a big driveway and then a set of steps into the main reception of the school. And I remember walking up this. It was the only you weren't allowed as a pupil to go through this entrance because it was only for like visitors or parents.
But you did.
Well, on exam collection day, you were allowed to go through the main doors.
We were exactly the same.
So I went to collect and we got given time slots, and me and all my friends got split up. So I got like, I don't know, 9:30. My friends got 10:30. Another friend got 11:30. So I turned up on my own. And as I walked in through these main doors, and I just remember my old year head, Mrs. Smith, was stood there with her arms folded. And as I walked in, she just called me by my surname. She went, "Payne, a word," straight away. So, I mean, I went in cocky as anything.
Yeah.
So, I was, yeah, no worries. And she pulled me to the side and literally said, "You've done surprisingly well in your exams. We weren't expecting it. However," and I hadn't even got my results at this stage. So she'd obviously, you know, took a look.
Yeah.
She said, "However, if you want to complete your A levels, please make sure it is not here."
Wow.
And that was that. So, yeah, I was told I was too disruptive. But similar to what you said about the schools do get paid for retention of pupils, or they have to hit a certain amount of pupils hitting sixth form. That's why they wouldn't get rid of me.
Yeah.
So they had to hold on to me to complete that year to get the payment for me, essentially. But as soon as that hit, they were like, "We're going to cut our losses here."
It was unheard of that she would allow anybody to leave. And once people found out that she'd allowed me to go, it was a shock. It was like, what? This doesn't happen.
Your money in the bank, mate. And it's a real important message to get out there when it comes to schools, because I believe there's this perception that the schools do the best thing for the kids. They fucking don't.
No, they do not.
You are.
No, they do not.
As a pupil, like it or lump it, hate me for saying it, you are a money commodity to the school. So by sending your kids and keeping them in school, great if that's what they want to do. But if your kids are unsure what they want to do and you send them to sixth form, that money in the bank.
Absolutely.
So the school, and you think of it of any business, what would you do? If you ran that school, the business, and you knew that for each pupil that hits sixth form, you get a payout that then is needed to fund the school, where do you go push your kids? You go tell them to go to college.
Exactly.
Of course you're not.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and that was exactly what happened to me. Sixth form was not the place for me. I didn't conform. I got 3 final warnings, worked that one out, that they were going to kick me out of school. But it was little things though, Matt. Like, with me, I attended the classes I was meant to attend. My main problem was my downtime, what did they call it? Study periods, where you had, because I only did 3 subjects, so I had X amount of study periods. and they changed the rules for my year, where the years before me on their free periods could leave school grounds and go and if you might have 2 study periods back to back, so you got 2 hours.
Yeah.
You could walk into town
Yeah.
from the school, and they changed it and said we had to stay on site. And my opinion was bollocks.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to be here,
Yeah.
so if I'm not in lesson, I'm going to do what I want. So me and my best mate used to go to the pub.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then we'd come back half cut.
Yeah.
And I got pulled in, and it was we've seen you leaving the school. You got a warning, then a final warning, then do it again. We're going to kick you out. And
I would hate to go back to my school days. I really would hate to live it all again. But also, I'd really like to, with the knowledge I have now.
Yeah.
Because it'd be a completely different story.
Oh God, yeah.
A completely different story.
Well, I think schools now, obviously, they're so much more aware of people who are gay, of people who have different outlooks on life, shall we say, which is good to a degree, but I do believe it's kind of going too far
I
now.
could not agree more. I could not agree with you more. Far too far. Yeah. Far too far.
I think I've
and
mentioned
a lot of
this.
people are going to disagree with me.
Well, I've mentioned this before, Matt, on a previous episode about my daughter's school who have furries.
You have, and I think I messaged you about it because carry on.
But that, to me, again, people all hate me for it. That's too far.
I couldn't agree more.
There's respecting people's life choices, which I'm all for, because to be honest, mate, I don't give a shit what anyone does.
Absolutely.
Live your life as long as you're not hurting anyone. Do and be whoever you want to be.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Carry on. I'm very who am I to tell anyone to do anything differently? But when we're at a position now where, for example, a school can accept that children want to identify as either a teddy bear or a furry animal.
No.
Exactly.
No. That is not right.
Yeah.
And I get quite wound up about it sometimes.
Well,
because I don't think it is right.
I think entertaining it or accepting it is one thing, but if you put that child, say for example, a child wants to identify as a furry bunny, and that child is in a class of 30. It's one thing accepting or not telling the child they can't wear the bunny ears and the bunny tail and act like a bunny, but it's another thing telling the other 29 kids that you lot have to accept that is a bunny. That to me is where the problem is.
And some people listening to this may think that this is going a bit too far. I don't think it's going a bit too far to say that if you allow your child to believe or act like or think they are a rabbit, then that is some kind of abuse.
I agree. Yeah.
That's what and again, you may not agree with that, but I think it is. If you allow your child to believe that they are a cat and they can act like and purr like and eat like a cat, there's something wrong with you, because you can't allow your child to think that.
Listen, mate, I mean, this does it does also go into the adult world. So I was working for a customer 6 months ago, I think it was, and they work in the accounts department at a large company, and they actually came into work the following day while I was on site. We were just talking, and they went, "We had the most surreal thing yesterday," and they'd had a job interview. So they'd interviewed a load of candidates, and they said they'd had a lady turn up who had come into the office, sat down, and just said, "Look, before we start the interview, I'm letting you know I identify as a furry." So another furry. And this particular lady had said that she identifies as essentially a stuffed toy, a teddy bear.
Stop it.
And because the customer said to me, he was like, "Have you ever heard of this, Russ?" Because we did not. It was him and his colleague. We didn't know what to do. But they made us aware prior to the commencement of the interview that was how they identify. And I just thought, I'm sorry, man, that's a mental illness.
It is a mental illness.
Because how can you sit there and say that you identify as a teddy? You can't speak then, can you? How are you going to interview? How are you going to perform a job? How are you going to do
your job?
But the craziness that we live in now is that legally they have to accept and accommodate it. And that is where it's gone wrong.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to pretend to be a teddy, sat in your house,
Yeah.
crack on.
Fine. Once
Like,
you've closed your door,
exactly.
do what you want.
Or even sit in your front garden as
Yeah.
a teddy. Do what you want. Like, it's fine. But you can't present yourself in a working environment and say, but not only do I identify this way, you have to accept it.
Absolutely.
You have to believe.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I'm going to persecute you for not believing that I'm a fluffy toy.
Yeah. And aside from the whole fluffy toy ridiculousness, I do have some strong-ish views on the whole identifying as debate. So those that identify as something other than LGBTQ, I think that some of those things are just ridiculous. And sometimes it takes somebody like me to say that, because a lot of people can say it who are straight and they'll get it in the neck for saying it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes somebody who's gay to say it. And I don't mind saying it. And I don't mind putting myself out there and saying,
man, let's have the conversation then, Matt. let's peel the lid off. So what do you mean by that, mate? Let's just clarify.
So when I was at school, one of the main I'll hit you hard words were, you're queer. To me, that was and still is quite a derogatory word to call somebody who is gay. Now, I know now, in recent years, that the word queer is very much accepted. And you should address gay people as queer.
Okay.
That's a recent thing.
Just for the record here, I'm not clued up. So if I make any missteps here...
I'm not particularly...
It's an innocent misstep if I make it.
I'm not particularly...
But
if you were to introduce me as, this is Matt, he's come to do the podcast, he's queer. When I was at school, that'd be a massive derogatory thing to say. Now, it's not.
Okay.
I still see it as quite a derogatory thing to say. I still don't like that word because when I was growing up, it wasn't nice. So I just can't get my head around that word.
So that would have been like a trauma attachment for you.
Absolutely.
For that.
Yeah. But now people are...
See, I would have thought queer. I'd have thought that would have been on the okay list, if I'm honest. I mean, me personally...
It is now. It's very okay now.
Because of all the words that I'll just stick to gay. I think you can't go wrong with gay. So I'll just stick to gay.
Yeah.
But I know there are certain words that are derogatory.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was one, if I'm honest.
It was then. It's not now. It's you commonly used now. But when I was growing up, that was a real bad word.
Then again, though, if you think about the meaning of the word, it's not really complimentary, is it?
No, I don't think it is.
It almost means like strange.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But it's not. So, in fact, mate, on reflection in this moment, I'd agree with you.
So, what I'm trying to say is I don't want to offend anybody. I really don't want to offend anybody. If anybody is...
If you're easily offended, turn off now.
Yeah, turn off now. But the whole non-binary...
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I'm sorry, but I don't get it. For somebody to say, I am attracted to a person and their personality, not what they have between their legs. I'm sorry, but I don't buy it. I just think you're trying to be some kind of different special.
Well, that would be bisexual, wouldn't it, surely? If you don't mind what's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I say, it takes me sometimes. It takes a person like me to say it.
There is, mate. There's a lot of... The thing to me, when it comes to sexuality, the issue I believe the issue is that people make sexuality their identity.
And it's so not.
And as a straight male, it's a small piece of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So if you
Absolutely.
were to ask me, you know, describe yourself in 5 words,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even mention the fact that
It
I'm
wouldn't
straight
come into it.
because it would be
never come
assumed.
into it.
Yeah, but because sexuality it becomes such a high point of identity
Mm-hmm.
amongst, I guess, people who are more diverse.
I don't think it should be.
No, it's well, I am
Yeah.
non-binary. Like
Yeah.
for example,
Yeah.
it would be the first thing.
It's like those people that introduce themselves as I am a he, him, a she, they, a whatever,
Pronouns.
her, them, who. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I don't
fuck
get that.
off. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I really don't want to know. If I'm looking at you and you look like a woman, female, then I will call you she, and I
Yeah.
will address you as her. And don't have a go at me for not saying they, because that's what you look like. That's what I will assume you are.
It's an odd one, mate. I watched. Have you seen that interview with Sam Smith, the Fisher? Have you seen that one where they talk about him going?
Sam Smith, because we'll be here the rest of the day.
Fishing. Have you seen that one though?
Yes.
Matt? Yeah, a Fisher them.
Just no.
Yeah, I'm
Just
with
no.
you. Yeah, it's.
No.
And this is what I mean when it comes to it. Acceptance is fantastic, but it seems to be being pushed to its utter limit.
Oh my God. And where's it going to stop?
Exactly.
Where is it going to stop?
Exactly. The problem is, and again, it's free choice for people to accept or not accept things, because that's the freedom. But there appears that the freedom to not accept things is being withdrawn. And the boundaries just keep getting pushed and pushed and pushed.
When I get emails from people, whether that be customers or whoever, and it says it's signed off by David, brackets,
he, him. Yeah.
I look at it, I roll my eyes and I think, fuck off. You called David.
Yeah.
You're a he, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It really does my head in. I don't like it. It winds me up.
I try, if I'm honest, I try not to give it too much attention.
We've got to 2024 without using all that bollocks.
Yeah.
So why do we need it now?
But to me, it doesn't matter.
I'm going to offend a lot of people. A lot of people will switch off at this point. A lot of people will probably switch off when I announced I'm a massive homo, but I don't care.
Mate, not at all. Do you know what? I've always said this though, with the episodes that I do, I've never ever had a focus on I want 10,000 downloads or I want 1,000 downloads. Yeah. I don't care if it's one, because genuinely there could be somebody that's out there that is in any kind of position that something you're going to say will resonate and connect with. It's worth it. So fuck offending people. Like,
absolutely.
People, it's a choice to be offended. And if you are offended by anything that's said, then okay, stop listening. At any given point, that is your human right and choice. Stop listening.
Absolutely.
That's it. And totally the brilliant thing about opinions is we're all allowed to have them. We don't have to agree on everything.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the beauties. And that's also where a lot of learning goes on. A lot of life lessons come in. You know, outlawing opinion is a very dangerous thing, because when you are only allowed to follow one narrative, that's a very frightening situation for society to put itself in.
Absolutely. And you don't have to accept the opinion or agree with what somebody else says, but you do have to respect the fact that I have one.
Exactly.
Whether you agree with it or not.
Well, that's the problem, though, isn't it? Like, overarching this conversation is that you have to respect people's opinions who might decide that their pronouns are different or that they identify as whatever they do. We live in a world now where we're told we have to accept that opinion, but they don't have to accept your opinion.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
And that's my point, is like, you can call yourself whatever you want. You can call yourself a bunny rabbit. That's fine. You can do that. I can't stop you doing that. But you can't make me call you a rabbit.
Absolutely.
That's where the line is.
Because you're not.
Exactly.
I get it. I do get it.
But that's where the line's fucked at the minute. It's one directional. But there we go. We've drifted onto that, mate. No, I'm happy to have. This is what I love about this podcast, is it goes where it goes, mate. You carry Joe Rogan it, man.
Toilet.
You carry on.
All right.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. We will pause it there, and we're back in the building. Where were we?
Being a bit controversial, I think.
Insulted. Let's get back to you, Matt. Let's
Okay.
get back to some safe, solid ground.
Yeah.
So we've got to the point where you left school.
I left school. So I needed to do something because no way was I going to be sitting on my ass for the rest of the summer because it just wouldn't allow it. So I then got a job quite quickly in the NatWest Bank. And I was like a cashier.
Okay.
Just like in the days where you had cashier, the good days, where you could go and pay your actual money.
When banks used to be open,
That's
you
right,
mean?
yeah.
So we used to actually have banks.
So I used to sit there and take money and give money and all of that. And I did it for about 6 months. But the lady that employed me was a bank manager. She was a friend of my mum. And her son worked in the bank as well. The son didn't like me at school. So I think the mum was told to get rid. So I was there about 6 months.
Yeah.
I was like, fucking hell, what am I going to do now? So I went to Bedford College. I enrolled at Bedford College and did art and design, which I wanted to do, and painting and decorating, just for something else to do.
Okay.
So I did a couple of years there.
So that was your first experience of the decorating industry.
Yes. So I did a couple of years there, but I never actually finished any course. My brother was still at university. It was off the cards for me. So my parents had bought me a car so I could get to college. That was kind of my university fund. Drew the short straw there. So yeah, I was driving into Bedford from St Neots to college, and I didn't finish it, unfortunately. The course ended. I did get I got a qualification for something, but I can't even remember what it was. I got something. And then I was probably 18 by then, and I needed a job because I had a habit of spending money. I really liked spending money.
Okay.
Which became a bit of a problem. So I got a job at the tribunal service, and that's where I started as a clerk to the tribunal. So still lived at home then. But when I was probably 19, 20, I bought a house in Milton Keynes. So you've got St Neots, Bedford, Milton Keynes. My brother had ended up in, I won't go into it because it's not particularly relevant, but my brother had ended up in Milton Keynes after university. He had a house there and I moved very closely to him.
Okay.
Bought this house, thought that I was the big adult, loved it, always interested in homes, interiors, wanted to make my house really lovely. So I got into this house. Took a lot of it out. I wanted it to be mine. It was all not very nice. I was trying to do it all without a pot to piss in. And unfortunately got myself into an incredible amount of debt doing it.
Okay.
Which I'm not particularly proud of, but looking back, it was a massive lesson. And in a way, I'm glad it happened. 6 months into having that place, I met Glenn, who is now one of, if not my closest friend. So I was 20 then. So yeah, I've known him over 20 years. Met Glenn. We started a relationship. I sold the house, moved in with him. 6 months down the line, I'm in the spare room and we've broken up.
Oh, okay.
I stayed living with him as friends for 11 years. We were and still are the best of friends. The whole relationship thing was a bit of a mistake. Shouldn't have happened. But we just worked very well together as mates.
Yeah.
I had my issues. He had his issues. He was an alcoholic. Still, he's an alcoholic. I didn't know at the time when I met him he was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I was very young and very naive and didn't know which way was up at 18.
Yeah.
Just thought he liked a few more drinks than anybody else.
I think when you're young, mate, it's quite easy to confuse alcoholism with partying, isn't it? It's or being social even.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is quite easy to.
So we lived together in what was our house. It was, it was okay for the most part. We got a couple of dogs, and I had my life. He had his life. We had each other at home, company, I suppose. It was great. It was good. But he did have this major problem of being an alcoholic, which led him to quite a lot of trouble at times.
Right.
He got in trouble with the law a couple of times. He ended up in Crown Court once. I should clarify, actually, that the reason he ended up in Crown Court wasn't particularly to do with his drinking. It was to do with something completely different. So I'll give you a very brief, he probably won't thank me for telling this story, but Glenn's always been a bit of a Del boy, a bit of a wheeler dealer. He's the last person on the earth that you would look at and say, he's gay. You just wouldn't think it. He's not like that at all. And his lifestyle is just not that way. Anyway, he started dealing in replica watches.
Right.
He loved a Rolex. He loved a tag. And he had a contact in London who had factories making replica watches. And they weren't the kind of thing you get on the beach in Tenerife. They were very quality. Good, high quality. They were 500 quid each for a replica. So they were that good. He was making a lot of money from it. Went on for a couple of years. Again, I was young and naive and I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I thought it's a replica, it's all right. I didn't know. I'd never heard of anything like trademark infringement or anything like that until one Saturday morning, 4 police cars and 2 vans pull up outside the house. The door knocks and it's Trading Standards who arrest him, raid the house, take everything we've got, put him in a police cell. So it was a big case.
Really?
And Rolex were involved, Tag were involved, and they were. I mean, it was classic. They were saying that he was trying to use their trademark. A lot of people did it and still do it all over the country. I mean, open eBay now, you can get whatever you want.
Yeah.
But anyway, that ended up in Crown Court in Cambridge. So that went on for a while.
What was the result of it?
But I supported him through it. The result of it was. So it was all very, very complicated. The case went on for about 3-4 years before it got to the final hearing in court. It was never one of the manufacturers that were taking him to court. It was Trading Standards. So it was their case. So it was Bedfordshire Borough Council as Trading Standards taking him to court. And it was, I can't remember the term, when you make money out of doing something dodgy. I can't remember the term. But they were going after him for, I think it was about 100.
Proceeds of crime.
Proceeds of crime. Thank you. That's the term. Proceeds of crime. They were going after him for about 150 grand.
Christ.
So house was at risk because nobody's got 150 grand sitting in their pocket. A lot was at risk. And Glenn's dad was very supportive and he became involved. They had a barrister and a solicitor and counsel there. Anyway, long story short, the hearing went on for a few days. Glenn's dad made a plea with them at the 11th hour at lunchtime on the day that it was due to end. And he said, I think it was about 80 grand. He said, I'll settle this case for 80 grand. And Trading Standards said, no, it's 100 or not at all. So Glenn and his dad said, no thanks. So it got to the final hearing and the judge awarded that basically the fine was 60, I think.
Right. So it was a win.
So it was a bad day in the office for trading standards.
Yeah.
And it was a massive win. A massive win.
See, don't get me wrong, debt is bad. However, as you'll have heard, I worked as a bailiff collecting warrants for all sorts of like debts, most of it local authority. But what that time period doing that did for me is it just changed my whole opinion on debt and money. In terms of, if you know how to, it's so easy to not pay things. But the severity of it, and the fact that it's just numbers on a screen. The amount of big companies that write off hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of debt and nobody bats an eyelid, it changes your perception on, those kind of things. Like, to me, when you actually zoom out and look and you think, well, if I haven't got the money, I ain't got the money. What are you going to do? What can you take from me? The proceeds of crime thing, I know it's been changed recently, but a friend of mine, who I won't go into details with, was subject to a proceeds of crime order prior to the change, and it's like a lifetime sentence. So he served time as well, but got hit with proceeds of crime that is over his head for life.
Wow.
Whereas now it's got like a time limit, or I believe it's time served and then it expires or something. But this particular friend of mine, he's in a financial situation where he basically can't ever own anything.
Yeah.
Because they could turn up 30 years later and go, we'll have that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's changed, and it was different then, and it was a fine. It wasn't a debt; it was a fine for what he'd done, and they were trying to claw back some of the proceeds of his crime.
Yeah.
Although a lot of it, there was nothing to show for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happened, and I said to him, we were very close, very good friends, still are, and I said to him, "You involve me with the police again, because I'm not like that. I come from this lovely family which has got, the whole 2.4 children. I'm all right. Don't involve me in that again."
Yeah.
But thanks to alcoholism again, the police did end up at the door. And this time it was more to do. He was in a very, very bad place with alcoholism, and it involved a fight with a taxi driver. Outside the house. It was all very unpleasant. It was all very aggy and horrible. And the police turned up at the door, and I said, "Yeah, come in. I'll tell you exactly what happened. There he is if you want to arrest him." And that wasn't very nice. After then, he booked himself into... He'd been to rehab before, but didn't particularly work. He went to a place called the Providence Project, which is based in Bournemouth. And he was actually in there with Paul Gascoigne.
Oh, okay.
Gaza. A few other famous people have been there. But he did 3 months there. And although he didn't stop drinking indefinitely, it absolutely changed him. And he learned some massive tools how to deal with it. And yes, he does drink now, but things are completely different to how they used to be. And life is no longer the absolute carnage and car crash that it used to be.
I think there's a clear definition to make between functioning alcoholics and non-functioning alcoholics.
Yeah, right.
Non-functioning to be defined as alcoholism that stops your life functioning in a normal manner. And then there are very functional alcoholics. I dare say, if you're listening to this, you probably know some and you've got no idea that they are.
Absolutely.
Where alcohol is a daily part of their life.
Yeah.
However, they don't get drunk every day. I guess it's like it's like any other drug, Matt, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like people who are addicted to sleeping pills or whatever it might be. So there's the functioning form, but it's still alcoholism.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's again, you talk about mental health. It's an illness.
It definitely isn't. Absolutely an illness.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, well, I've had quite a few guests who have come on who have struggled with addictions and battles with addictions. And with alcohol, it's such a strange one because it's the only drug in the world where you get frowned upon for not consuming.
100%.
So when you
100%.
have an addiction to it, and then you've got that social pressure of that, it's tough. It's tough.
So, yeah, he is fantastic now. Great. Totally turned around.
I'm glad
we don't live together anymore. still a massive part of my life and a very, very good friend. But yeah, that's Glenn. So I got my own place after that, and vowed that I did not want to ever be in a relationship ever again. That's kind of still the case.
Okay.
But after, and actually during when I still lived with Glenn, I did meet somebody who turned out to be a best friend in the world. In fact, before him, going back to when I was probably 16, 17, I did meet somebody else, not on a romantic level at all, who was just a very good friend. My parents knew his parents. He was gay. And I think because I was so young, he wanted to and did take me under his wing a little bit and made sure that I was all right because, being gay then wasn't the safest place to be. And he was really good to me. We were friends for a very long time. Steve, he was called. Again, I say, our families knew each other a little bit. Unfortunately, he passed away probably 6 years ago now. That was a horrible end. He had cancer and he died, and that was horrible. But he was a really, really good friend.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So aside from Steve and Glenn, obviously I had friends and I had a social network. But the other friend who was very special and important to me was somebody that I met a long time ago, probably for the first time 15, 20 years ago. I knew of him, but we became quite close friends 15 years ago. He literally lived just down the road from me, and we used to knock about together. He was gay too, but there was never any romance between us. Nothing at all like that. We were just very, very good friends. And people used to joke that we were the married couple because we did everything together apart from the obvious that would make us married. It just wasn't a thing. We went on holiday together. We saw each other socially with other people and just us. I'd be around his house a lot. We both discovered quickly into knowing each other that we both hated Christmas. I'm not your typical gay in that respect. I fucking hate Christmas. It's not my thing. And he said, yeah, so do I. I can't stand it. So we started to go on holiday on Boxing Day. And we did that for 3, I think, consecutive years. And we had a great time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he passed away too, which was horrific, and probably it is the worst thing that I've had to go through probably in my life yet, because it was such a horrific time when he died. You do not only lose somebody, but your life is lost then as well. So that happened 7 years ago. It was 7 years ago on the 2nd of June, and it was a horrific state of events that led to him passing away.
Okay.
Which I'll go into if you want. If you would like
Listen,
to hear that.
if you're happy to talk about it, Matt, then yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy to talk. It wasn't always, but I can now. So Jason and I were very close. We had another friend called PJ who is lovely, and that was Jason's friend really. We were introduced and we got on great. So this one particular weekend, we were due to go away for the weekend to Birmingham. And it was, I don't want to sound stereotypical, but it was Birmingham Pride. I'm not a Pride person. It's not something I go in for. Don't particularly like the whole Pride thing. But we were going and we went. So we drove up on the Saturday morning. So there was me, Jason, PJ, and another mate. So there's 4 of us staying in a travel lodge. So we checked in, went out for the day, did some shopping, knocked about, had a few drinks, went back to a hotel, got ready, went out for the evening. That was a Saturday. The Sunday did the same. The Monday was a bank holiday. So we'd been out most of the day on the Sunday. And we were all drinking. We'd all had a few drinks. probably from mid-afternoon. None of us were particularly pissed or drunk, but we couldn't have driven a car. So, we had a great afternoon, all of us. Woke up on the Monday morning. It was a bank holiday Monday. We woke up in the travel lodge. Peach and our other mate, they were in one room, and Jason and I were sharing another room. Wherever we went, we always shared a room. That was just the way it was. Woke up at like 9:30 in the morning, and we had to be out by, I think it was 10 or 10:30. We didn't have long from me waking up, and I was like, shit, there's all this shit everywhere. We've got to get up and we've got to go. Bit hungover, a bit, jaded from the night before. So I got up, Jason's asleep. I got up, get in the shower, get changed. And I'd bought, that day, I'd bought a new pair of trainers that were white. And being a dick, I'd wore them out that afternoon. And because we'd been in and out of pubs, they were filthy. And I was like, anyway, so I sat back on the bed. I'm ready. Thought, I need to wake him up. He's only got like 20 minutes to get up. So I kind of raised my voice and said, Jason, get up. You need to get in that shower. And he woke up and kind of sat up a little bit. And he was looking at me. And I'm thinking, fucking hell, you're hungover. We didn't drink that much. We've drunk more than this. You're hungover. And I said, we need to... you need to have a shower. We need to get out of here. And I need to sort my fucking trainers out because they're filthy. And he just looked at this pair of trainers on the floor for a few 10 seconds. And he looked at them and he went, then he looked at me and he went, dirty, dirty, dirty. I'm going, yeah, they're filthy, aren't they? I said, get in the shower. So he got up and kind of walked to the bathroom, and I was like, I don't know if he's all right or not. He must be really hungover, or if he's not, maybe not feeling well. So he walked in the bathroom. He was in there 5 seconds, must have walked in and walked out.
Yeah.
And by the time he walked out, it was like somebody had put the shower head over him. He was completely soaked. He was totally sweating. And I went, are you all right? How do you feel? What's wrong? And he kind of leant against the wall like that and then came back up. And I was like, that's not right. And then he kind of went towards the door again like that and then kind of came back up. And I thought, you're not very well. I said, what's the matter? Tell me how you feel. And he just looked at me and said, yeah. I thought, fucking hell, something's wrong. So I picked up my phone. I phoned PJ, who was on another floor there. I said, Jason's not very well. We'll meet you in reception. We're going to come down to reception now. He went, yeah, Matt's not. The other guy was called Matt that he was with. He said, Matt's not very well as well. He's been sick this morning. He's feeling a bit. I said, no, Jason's not hungover. There's something wrong with him and I don't know what it is. So get down to reception now. So I've bundled our stuff in our bags, kind of guided him. He was dripping wet. He was producing so much sweat. He was soaked. Got him down to reception. And he didn't sit down. He couldn't sit. I don't know why. He couldn't sit down for some reason, but there was on the railings outside the hotel, there was like railings, and he leant over them. And he's dripping with water, dripping with sweat. PJ came down and I just went, look, I said, I'm going to phone an ambulance. So I phoned an ambulance. Ambulance came. Me and PJ are just like, we've never seen this before. What? So I'm trying to like hold him and say, can you talk to me? Tell me, how do you feel? What's wrong? And he just couldn't say a word. It was just gibberish. It was... Anyway, this can be quite a long story, but I'll try and keep it brief. So...
No, don't, mate. It's fine.
Get him on a stretcher, put him in the ambulance. And we'd driven up to Birmingham in Jason's car. And he worked for a Volkswagen Audi dealership, so he always had a nice car. I'm sure PJ won't mind me saying that he can be a bit of a woman when it comes to driving. And Jason had just picked up a Golf R, which was beautiful. And I'd said to PJ, one of us go with him, but the other one will have to follow in Jason's car. He went, I don't know if I can drive the car. So I said, that's fine. I'll drive. You go in the ambulance. And then he said, no, actually, I don't think I want to travel in the ambulance. I'll drive the car. I said, fine, whatever you want. I'll go in the ambulance. So get in the ambulance. We sat outside this travel lodge in the middle of Birmingham for about 40 minutes. And they're working on him and they're on their little iPads and they're doing this and they're taking blood and they're giving it. And I said, I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but could we get to a hospital? Because he needs to be seen and we're in the centre of a big city. Surely we can get to a hospital within minutes. And they said to me, we suspect, we don't know, but we suspect that he might have had a stroke. So what we're trying to do is get him into a hospital that has a bed, that has a specialist stroke unit. Because if that's what it is, that's where he will need to be. And it's better to take him straight there than get him to Birmingham and then transfer. I said, great, I understand. We're preparing him to leave in the ambulance. He needs a lot of preparation before we leave. And we're just doing that now. So I was like, fine. So he's looking at me the whole time. He's looking around and then he's looking at me and he'd find my eyes and almost smile and then maybe like try and reach. So I was holding his arm. I was going, it's all right, mate. We're going to get you, whatever this is, we're going to get you sorted and we'll get you to hospital. And so we leave for the hospital. They shut the doors. There's one guy driving. There's one guy in the back. We get onto this. I said, where are we going? I said, we're not from here. I don't know where we are. Can you just tell me where we're going? And he said that we're going to a specialist hospital in West Bromwich, which was just outside of Birmingham.
Yeah.
So, and that's a specialist stroke unit. So we're on the way and I'm sitting with the paramedic and he said to me, can you tell me your chain of events the last 24 hours, where you've been, what you've eaten, what you've drunk, what. So I said, we drove here Saturday morning, staying in the travel lodge. This is where we've been. We've been to a few pubs, can't name them all, don't know what they are, but this is where we've been. Got back at whatever time last night. We've woke up this morning. And he said, has he, had anything? We know where you've been. You've been at Birmingham Pride. Has he taken it? I said, no, I promise you, he hasn't. He's not taken anything at all. We're not those kind of people. We can drink like fishes. And I regret to say we can smoke like chimneys, but we do not touch any kind of drugs at all. It's just not me. It's never been me. It was never Jason. And it's just not us, not our thing.
Yeah.
So I said, no, that's out of the question. He said, fine. I thought so, but. So we get to the hospital, and he's taken into the crash department, and I'm totally with it. I'm like, I've got to sort this out. I've got to be there for you. We go right through the hospital, and these doors just shut in my face, and this whole team are waiting for him. And this nurse said to me, go and sit in that room. Somebody will be with you. So I I'm like, oh, I'm crying, I'm upset. What do I do? PJ's on his way in the car, trying to park somewhere. Anyway, he's on his way. So a nurse came to the room and sat down with me and said, I know you're upset, but I have to ask you because we need to know, what's he taken? And I said, he hasn't, I promise you he's not taken anything. She said, well, we're suspecting a few things. It could be this, it could be that. It's neurological to some extent, but there's other things going on that could be affected by an illegal drug. Can you just try and help us to help him? I said, I promise you nothing. She goes off. 10 minutes later, consultant comes in with a doctor. They sit down next to me and he said to me in no uncertain terms, he was very straight about it. He said, this is now a matter of life and death. You need to tell us what is taken. And by this time, I was a little bit pissed off because I've been asked for the third time by a third person. And I told him straight, I said, I promise you he has not taken anything. If you do find something in his body that shouldn't be there, I promise you he did not put it there. It's some kind of spiking or something.
Mm.
Honestly. Thank you so much. Hope you understand. Had to ask you. I'm like, whatever, just do whatever you need to. Ask me any question you need to help him. I said, in a way, I wish I could tell you that he'd taken X, Y, and Z, because then you'd know what the problem was. You could flush out of him and do whatever you need to do to him to make him better. I wish I could tell you that, but I can't. So they go back. They come back again and said, I don't know what test it was. They'd done some kind of test. And they said, there's nothing in him that shouldn't be. And I said, thank you very much. I didn't tell you so. I understand why they had to do it.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't care what they had to do at that point. There was something seriously wrong with him that I didn't know about.
I must admit, mate, sat listening to everything you've said to this point, my head was going, was he spiked?
Okay.
That was where I was. Okay. So I can understand.
And I thought he probably had been.
Mm.
I thought it's funny that all four of us were out together and it's just him.
Yeah.
Maybe it'd be more than one of us. Maybe he was unlucky. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so they came back to me and said, this is the situation. There's nothing in them that shouldn't be, which I was very relieved about. But at the same time, I was like, well, if it's not that, what is it? So the most loveliest nurse, I think he was. I don't know what staff he was. It can be a bit of blur at times, but he came to me and said, we need to induce him into a coma. We need to do scans, X-rays, MRI. We need to do a lot of things to him today, that he's beginning to fight us because he's so disorientated, and we need to put him into a coma. Do you want to come and be with him while we do it? And I was like, absolutely. Whether it's me or somebody else, I don't care who it is. I just want somebody that knows him to be there while they do it, because you're saying goodnight then, really. You're going to sleep. So they let me into this room. There's people everywhere. He's got shit coming out of him everywhere. They'd cut his joggers and T-shirt off. He's laying there in his boxers. It was not... He would have hated for anybody to see him like that. Anyway, so I went in, and they said, this is what we've taken out of his pockets. So he had his watch, his phone, and his wallet. They said, can you take these? Yeah, fine. I said, right, just be with him while we induce him into this coma. So I held his hand and I said, they're going to find out what's wrong with you. I'll see you when you wake up. I'll be here when you wake up. Won't be long. Talk to you soon. So he goes into the coma. And then we're sat really for the rest of the day until about 7 o'clock that night. And the more I thought about it, the more I just thought, I genuinely am intrigued to know what is wrong with him and what this is, because I've got no idea. So about 7 o'clock that night, he'd been put into intensive care and they'd settled him into a private room. Another consultant came to us and sat us down and said, there's three major things wrong with him. He's got a blood clot on the base of his brain. He's got double pneumonia and one collapsed lung. And I was like, I said, last night, we're like me and you are now. Everything was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So he said, in the last 6 to 8 weeks, he's suffered a stroke, and that has left a blood clot in the base of his brain, because that's what a stroke is.
Yeah.
That blood clot has been sat there waiting to move for all this time. This morning when you woke up, or in the night, that blood clot started to move, and that is the stroke. So that's what's happened. That's where we are with that. I said, right, my first question, what are you going to do to fix him? What's the plan? And they said, under normal circumstances, with just the brain trauma, we would operate on the brain to release the clot, patch him up, wake him up from the coma, and see what damage the stroke has done to him. That's a normal procedure. That's what we would do. And that's pretty straightforward for stroke people.
Yeah.
He said, but with double pneumonia and a collapsed lung, he will not survive a general anaesthetic. So we can't do that operation. It's out of the question. He will die. It's all right, okay. What do you do now then? So they said, we will pump him full of antibiotics, clear the pneumonia as much as is safe to reinflate the lung. Once that's reinflated, he is not in the best position for a general anaesthetic, but we then have to put him under one to clear this blood clot. So that was the plan, and that's what they did. So this is Monday afternoon. By the Tuesday night, this blood clot has started to move again, which is another massive stroke. And by the following morning, he was basically brainstem dead.
Fucking hell, mate, that's horrible.
Where do you start? Massive shock. So then the conversation has to be, what do you want to do about it? So I mean, not many people have been through it, thankfully, but you have to go through, the medical profession have to go through a series of tests to be absolutely 100% sure that this person is brainstem dead. Because if there is any sign, even 1% of life, they have to keep them going.
Yeah.
Even if they can, just open one eye and look at you, they have to be sure that they're dead before they switch off any life-saving machine. So he's on a ventilator already and everything's keeping going. So they, over the next 24 hours, they did this series of tests. And everybody knew that he was dead, really. They do one where they open up his throat and touch it, and they're looking for a reaction, and they open the eye and they're looking for some kind of reaction. It's not pleasant what they do, but they have to be sure. And it came to the Thursday night, Friday morning, and they confirmed that there was no sign of life and he was brainstem dead, and the only thing keeping him going was the ventilator that it was on. And did we want to let him go, basically? So that was it. It was, you have to put a time on it because they can say when they do it. So we did 7:00 that night, and I and a few other people were with him when that happened, and they took everything off of him, the machine, the ventilator, everything. He had cannulas and horrible. And he instantly, as soon as the machine stopped, he stopped and he instantly died.
Mate.
Yeah, so that's what happened, and absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. They said we can't issue a death certificate because he had, going back a little bit, he'd had a very, very minor operation in Bedford Hospital 6-8 weeks before this event. And they think that during that operation, he'd had a stroke, but it wasn't picked up on. And that had caused this blood clot that had been sat there. So they said we can't issue a death certificate because we have to do some investigations with Bedford Hospital. And that's a whole nother story, which I can't go into, but that's a whole nother story. So his funeral was delayed by a good few weeks, and it wasn't 6-7 weeks after his death that we had the funeral.
Shit.
But I say but, there's no but. My point to the story is, after something like that happens to you, it changes your entire life and your entire perspective on everything. Absolutely everything. And it teaches you so much.
What was the biggest thing that you took from that? And I don't mean to say it like it's a positive or a lesson.
No,
when it does, I know exactly what you mean. I've been through a few of these sort of like life-changing experiences, traumatic experiences. That does it just completely flips your perception on values, importance, everything. But what did you take from that whole situation?
So many things I took from that situation. The top few would be that life can change like that
Yeah.
in an instant. So 1 minute we were having a great time, all out as mates, in our mid-30s, having a great time. The next minute, that had all changed. That was one. Another thing was that after things like this happen, as much as you don't want them to, life goes on. Life does go on. And I don't mean that in a not very nice way, but I remember driving home from the hospital that night, waking up the following morning in bed, and I was laying in bed, I was just waking up, and I could hear, I lived in quite a busy road at the time, and I could hear a door slamming, an engine starting, kids coming out the front door, somebody on the school run, and I remember lying in bed thinking, what are you lot doing? Jason's just died. What are you going to school for? What are you going to work for? You shouldn't be doing any of that. Life stops now. But it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't stop. People still go to work. People still do all the normal things that they do on a daily basis. I just didn't expect that to happen because I thought life should stop now. Because it's not just that person's life that stops and dies and ends. It's your life. If you spend so much time with somebody, if you're that close to somebody, when that person dies, your life dies with it as you know it at that time. And you have to learn to build a new one and have a new life. What was your question? What did I learn from it? They were probably the two biggest
I was
things.
sat in the moment with you in that there, Matt, because it's a really, really good description of bereavement. It really is.
It's the way I see it.
It isn't just the bereavement, the loss of the person. It's the loss of the person that you are
Absolutely.
up until that point.
Absolutely.
And then quite rightly, you do have to learn to re-establish yourself.
It's redo everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything that you do. So we were really close friends, as I've said. We weren't in a relationship, as I've said. But a lot of the things about our friendship were relationship type. For example, we both lived alone. He had quite a there was a lot of pressure in his job, a lot of stress in his job. And when he got home from work, he needed to let that out to somebody. Most mornings on our way to work, we'd be speaking to each other on the phone.
Yeah.
Most evenings at 5, 6 o'clock, he would ring and just vent for half an hour about who'd pissed him off, what he'd had to do. That's what we did. That was our relationship.
It was a relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not have been a sexual relationship, but it was a relationship.
Absolutely.
And quite often, people have less connection within a sexual relationship than they do within a friend relationship.
And I think that's why it was so strong, because we weren't in a sexual relationship and we weren't married or anything like that, because all of that pressure wasn't there. It was easier to be honest with each other and talk to each other about stuff.
I think the way I see it, studying psychology made me look into identity. And a person's identity, like who a person is, has so many different branches to it. So identity itself, I mean, like me, I'll take me for example. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a business owner, I'm a friend, I'm a brother.
You're a podcaster.
I'm a son, whatever this is. But there's all these things that make up who I am. And they've all got a varying percentage proportion of my overall identity. And when you've got a relationship with a friend like that no doubt made up, by the sounds of it, quite a big proportion of your identity, you don't lose all of you, but you lose that massive chunk.
Absolutely.
And then you've got to relearn to, that empty space. It doesn't stay empty forever. And that's the reality and the truth of it. Like we said, life goes on. Time stops for nobody and nothing. So eventually that hole, you can't operate with a huge hole in your identity. It does get filled. It might be that things that are already there grow and take up that space.
And that's what happened for me.
Yeah.
They did. And that was brilliant for me at the time. That's what I needed. And I had a lot of close people looking out for me, which was brilliant. But you're right. Life, as much as you don't want it to, life goes on. Another thing, you really do find out who your friends are in a situation like that. You really do. I won't give any examples of that because some are negative, but Yeah, you really do. People that you thought, didn't really care much or you didn't see much, all of a sudden they're there and they want to help you and they want to listen to you. And talking about it and telling people about this, the set of events that I've just been through with you, telling people about that was my biggest therapy, telling people. And I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to talk to strangers. I didn't want to talk to people that didn't know him. I only wanted to talk to people that knew him. And those strangers, those people, because so many people say it, and I understand why they say it when somebody dies, but those people that say, I know what you're going through, fuck off. That's one of the biggest. Fuck off. You don't know what I'm going through. Everybody's relationship with everybody else is a different relationship. So, for example, your relationship with your wife will be a different relationship than you have with your son. Your relationship with your wife's mate will be different to what she has with her. So you're grieving your relationship, not relationship that your wife's mate had with her. It's a difficult thing to explain, but every person's relationship is different. And when that person dies, we're all grieving something totally different.
Yeah.
So please don't tell me how I feel. People used to say to me, oh, my dad's brother's neighbour's cousin's son died the other day, so I know how you feel. Or, my granddad's neighbour who was 104, he had a stroke as well the other day and died, so I know how you feel. No, you don't know how I feel, so please don't tell me you do. It really used to wind me up.
It's a reflex,
I know it's a nice thing to say, but it did used to wind me up.
What it comes down to, mate, is that to me, people aren't comfortable. When anyone suffers a bereavement, you might know somebody that's lost somebody, and you think, it's that awkwardness of what do I say? Do I say the right thing? So there's a lot of stumbling that goes on, and it comes from a good place. But I know exactly what you mean.
I know it comes from a good place. Don't get me wrong.
To highlight my recent situation, very fucking recent, I lost my dog on Monday. Now, I made that public. Which again, because I feel my own self in the past would have bottled everything. That's how I dealt with things. So I'm trying to be different. I'm trying to evolve and grow and do the better thing for myself. And obviously starting the podcast and spreading the message of talking and let's talk, I'm like, I've got to practice my own shit. You know what I mean? I can't preach it and not do it. So that's what I've tried to do. However, as grateful as I am that a lot of people reached out to me with condolences and all the rest of it, I did have a lot of what you just said, which was, sorry to hear that, mate. I lost my dog on this day and that day. And I know that people are trying to resonate, but it doesn't help. It's not, in that moment, it's not about what they lost. It's just, I'm struggling with my bit. And I know where it comes from. There's no resentment. So if you've reached out to me with that, please don't take offense. Well, I do appreciate anyone checking in. But it's that, to me, it's that thing about a lot of people, even the people that do know how to talk, far fewer people know how to listen.
Oh, absolutely.
And that skill of, like, you can tell me that story. I can't fix that. I can't do anything to make you feel better, but just the offloading of it is enough.
One of my favourite sayings is, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that is because we should listen twice as much as we speak. And it's so true. We should.
Yeah.
Because that's why I'm here. The power of listening is massive.
It is, mate. It's often not reflected on enough.
No.
That's the thing. And that's why, like with the T-shirt designs, let's get that plug in there. There's the Let's Talk T-shirts and the Let's Talk, Let's Listen T-shirts, as beautifully modelled by Matt over here. But I felt it was important to get the Let's Listen into it, because it is, everyone talks about, people don't talk, people don't talk. Nobody seems to talk about who's listening. Who's listening? Like, have you developed the skills to listen?
Absolutely.
Does anyone talk about the skills to listen? Does anyone talk about how to be an effective listener? And I must admit that, don't get me wrong, I'm no saint. I was far from perfect, and and all that. I learned a lot of what I learned through volunteering with Samaritans, who are a listening service. So you literally get trained in how to listen, which sounds mad, because everyone's like, well, everyone listens. No, you hear. You can hear. Everyone can hear. not everyone can listen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a valuable resource.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing anyone can take away is just that little moment of self-reflection. Are you hearing or are you listening? Are you
Mm-hmm.
hearing to respond or are you just listening? Because often to listen, you don't actually have to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
respond. Just
Absolutely.
sit there and make eye contact and just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much value and therapy in that.
There is. I agree.
Well, I'm glad, mate, and I appreciate you sharing that
Mm-hmm.
part of your life, because grief and bereavement, mate, it's a bitch.
It is. It's absolutely horrendous, and I really don't think that we talk about it enough. I talk about death quite a lot, and I often raise the topic quite a lot with my friends and other social circles, and so many people shy away, don't want to talk about it. They'll change the subject. But I think when Jason died, I'd had grandparents pass away and people like that, more distant people, but nobody super, super close like that. And I forgot where I was going with it. But
talking about death.
What I'm trying to say, thank you. What I'm trying to say is I think we should talk about it now while we're all here and while we're all alive, because I was totally unprepared for what happened, totally unprepared. And I think by talking about it, we're training ourselves to cope with it maybe a little bit better. We're never going to cope with it well because it's awful to happen to anybody. But we can give ourselves the tools now if we talk about it, if we prepare for it a little bit more. I think by shying away from talking about death, we're doing ourselves, our children, our friends, an incredible disservice because we're not making it open now. And I think we should do that more. And it's not a very nice thing to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about it. But I think we should. There
is a taboo. There's 100% there's a taboo about talking about death. But the unfortunate truth of life is that it's unavoidable.
Exactly.
Everyone, I'm going to die, you're going to die. Yeah. Everyone that you know, I read a quote a while back and it was like, in 100 years' time, you and everybody you know will be dead. True. Everything you own will be somebody else's.
I've seen the reel. It's a reel on Instagram. And I've seen it myself. I know which one you're talking about.
And it's just for that moment. If you actually are in the moment and you listen and you read that, puts everything in perspective. But it's one of the sad, inescapable truths of life is that everything and everyone is going to die. So, yeah, it's odd that we wouldn't talk about it because it affects and happens to everyone.
Exactly.
Nobody is going to go through life without bereavement.
Absolutely. We talk about when people come into this world all the time. Women can talk for days about what their birth was like and, what the first 3 years of their kid's life was like. Yeah, I do. I think we should talk about it a lot more. But most people just don't know what to say.
It's kind of cultural as well, though, because I know our culture, I guess the English, as it were, we struggle with it, but certain other cultures don't. I mean, you look at Mexico, they have the Day of the Dead, they have a Festival of the Dead, they have, that they create shrines to their loved ones and all this kind of stuff. And it's dealt with a little bit more differently, where I think they are a bit more open.
And sometimes it's expected, and sometimes you can prepare a little bit for it. Other times it's really not expected.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to choose your preferred option because a lot of people say, I mean, for the person, for the individual, I'm sure it's better just to drop down dead and go and not suffer. But for the people around you, is that a good thing? No, it's not.
No.
Because you've got no time, you've got zero time at all. And people now who I talk to who have got very poorly relatives who will die soon, I say to them, I know you don't want to hear it, and I don't mean it the way it sounds, but you're actually really lucky that you've got some time now to say the things, talk about the things. You've got some time, and that is such a gift to be able to have that. Some people, like me with Jason, we had no time at all.
Yeah.
Zero time at all.
There is a difference, Matt. 100%. Anyone that says there isn't would be naive, because I believe people who pass away in old age, there's a bit of a kind of like romanticism to it. It's like, well, they've had a good life, or they've had their opportunities to live their life, whatever life has given them. there's always an injustice when it's somebody younger or unexpected.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the deaths that I've experienced in my life haven't, I'd say the majority of them haven't been through old age or anything like that. I seem to have seen a few. So my friend Steve that I mentioned earlier, who was a first really good friend when I lived in St. Neots when I was a lot younger, he died at 43. I think he was 43. He died. That's so young. That's 6 months from where I am now. That is so young. 6 weeks ago, a customer of mine, the loveliest lady you would ever wish to meet, she went to the garden centre on a Sunday afternoon to return something. She got out of her car and she was knocked over and killed. Like that, she was 59. Another friend, funnily enough, Steve, the friend that I lost when he was 43, I'm also friends with his sister. His sister got home from work 3 months ago to find her husband had hung himself in their house. He was in his 40s. It really is everywhere, and we need to talk about it more. We really, really do. And obviously that's why I'm here, and that's why you're here.
Well, you're fulfilling that right now. So, fair play for doing that. It is, mate. It's important. It's so important to talk about these things. It really is, because bottling up any kind of emotion never goes well. It really doesn't. And we're all emotional beings. And that's one of the things when it comes to the construction industry and that kind of the stereotypical being a man, holding it in, all that. It's such a toxic thing to have to feel that you have to carry.
And there are, I mean, I don't want to be here flashing the gay card everywhere, but there are a lot of men in the construction industry who are gay, but are masking it and masking it and masking it because they don't feel they can come out in the construction industry. I know at least 2 people who live local to me. One is a carpenter, one is a bricklayer. One is married, one is not, but they live the stereotypical heterosexual straight life. And I know, because they've confided in me, that that's not what they are. One of them in particular, hopefully you won't ever see this, but there's no names here, but he's also an alcoholic. And I know that he drinks because he's hiding who he is. I know that. And it's people like him that are at massive risk of doing something very silly because they feel they can't do it.
I can't begin to imagine the pain of living an entire existence.
Nor can I.
Being somebody that you're not.
Nor can I. I couldn't do it. I'm not that strong. I don't know whether it's strong or it's weak. I don't know what it is. I'm not that. I see it as strong. I'm not that strong.
I just see it as torturous. Touching on it again, we've got one life, and given the scale of who we are, where we are, the planet, and history and everything, we're here for such a speck.
That's right.
We're so insignificant when you talk about in terms of the universe.
Absolutely.
So to take that, and this is one of the big misconceptions as well, isn't it? Is that a lot of people live a life that isn't true to who they are because they're so worried that everybody's going to judge them. 9 times out of 10, people don't give a shit.
And the older you get, the less you give a shit. Yeah. I'm over 40 now. That's all. I'm over 40 now. And the older I get, the less I give a shit. I genuinely don't. I've had friends, people that I've come into contact with, customers that I know. So, for example, about a month ago, did a job for a guy who had just moved house. He'd moved from one development to another, local to where I live. And I walked into his house. I was hanging some wallpaper on a Saturday morning. Walked into his house, and his little lad was running about, who was probably 4 or 5. So I spoke to the man, and I said hi to the little lad. Hi, mate. You all right? How you doing? And I said to the little boy, what are we going to put up here then? Because I was trying to engage him in what I was doing. I said, what are we going to put on this wall? And he said, wallpaper. So I said, what colour is it? And I think he said orange or something like that. I kind of looked at his dad, and his dad gave him a little look. I thought, I'm going to do a test here. So I said to the little lad, your dad's asked me to paint that wall pink. Should we do it pink?
Mm.
And straight away, the dad, he ain't fucking having pink in this room. Not having it in his bedroom. He's not having it in this house. There's no pink going in this house because he ain't one of them. And I thought, right, I know where I stand. I know how I need to be.
Yeah.
Can't remember what I was getting at with this, but there are people out there.
To ask a direct question here, Matt, do you ever have to mask your being gay? Do you ever do that with customers where you hide it from a customer for fear of losing work?
On occasion, yes, definitely.
Mm.
That is the answer. On occasion, yes. But there are, I would say, 9 out of 10 customers really don't.
Oh, absolutely.
Give a shit.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, when I first started doing what I do, when I first started being a decorator, my first, because it has, and I hate to say it, but it's true, in the job that I do, being a painter and decorator, my sexuality has become a little bit of a USP.
Yeah.
And whether you like it or not, that's the way it is, and it has.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people like it. A lot of people like to have a chat about, what you're doing in the room. And the gays can give a good eye sometimes.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, well, it's not the other side of that. It's on a different side of that. My first ever paid customer was for a lovely family, husband and wife, 2 children, girl and a boy. And they've moved into a new house. They'd had a decorator in to start to do the house. The plan was this guy was going to do the house.
Mm.
And when I got there to look at the work, only one room was half done. And it turned out that the decorator that they'd got in to do the work, on the second day of being in this house, had tried it on with the wife.
Fuck it now.
Which does not only give the profession a bad name, they obviously... What happened was...
Mate, that is such a huge breach of trust.
But
though,
it wasn't.
Isn't it? Like, that's
it
horrific.
wasn't just a verbal thing. He'd physically tried it on with her.
Oh, fuck you.
Which, anyway, what the upshot of that was, she went out for the rest of the day because she felt that uncomfortable
in her own house.
Totally understandable. He'd gone, locked up. Husband came home. She'd told the husband what had happened.
Mm.
As you can imagine, some shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
Anyway, the following morning, she went out before the decorator arrived. The husband had supposed to have gone to work, but he didn't.
Mm.
He greeted the decorator when he came in that day and told him in no uncertain terms, get your stuff and leave. And that's what happened. So they were too afraid to have anybody even in just to quote for a job.
Mm.
Because of that, she said, I don't want anybody in here. And then it was actually a friend of a friend who had said, Matt's starting up on his own. They knew.
So you were safe because you were gay,
exactly.
essentially.
Exactly.
It is
what it is, and it's a fact. And sometimes the husband more than the wife
would want me
to go in because they feel safe with their wife in the house.
Oh, look, I know for a fact on a few occasions so I've been running the business 24 years now. On a few occasions, I have either not won a job because the husband does not like the fact that I'm a young bloke.
Yeah.
And as obviously, it's no reflection on me. It's obviously a reflection on whatever their insecurities are. Mm-hmm. But I know, and I've had feedback that I've lost work because of the perceived threat. Mm-hmm. So
absolutely. It happens. That's life, and that will never not happen. On the flip side of that, I've had the same because of I'm gay. They do not want me in there, and that's fine. That really is all right. I've got plenty more to, it's fine.
But like you said, leaning into your USP, like using that, fucking why not?
Well, yeah.
And it's the same. I've got the same thing. Another topic of conversation within particularly the decorating industry is female decorators, of which I don't know whether it's just that there's more on social media now or that there's genuinely more ladies coming into the trade. Either way, fantastic. But there's a little bit of a friction between people that use it and people that, and then you've got like a split. It seems to be a split down the middle.
Absolutely.
Some ladies, and rightfully, I'm not going to get involved in the debate, but some people want to be just seen as a decorator, and then some of the female decorators heavily rely on female decorator as their USP. Personally, I think whatever, like
yeah, I get that.
Use it if you want to use it as a USP, great. If you want to be respected and have it nothing to do with your sex, then great.
However, when was the last time you saw a decorator's van that said male decorator?
Oh, well, there aren't any, are
exactly.
there? Yeah, there aren't.
Fine.
But leaning into perhaps what you said with the USP, if you can lean into the fact that you're a female decorator and maybe there's some clients out there that are more comfortable having a lady in the house,
absolutely,
why not take advantage of that?
I would.
Yeah,
absolutely. But, and I do, because people are more comfortable to have me in the house.
So when you get your van rewritten as...
No, it's still not going to happen.
Going to put it on the van.
Still not going to happen. I mean, there are a lot, I don't know about a lot. Out of the ones I know, there are some decorators, male, who are gay. I know that. They know that. Goes back to the whole gaydar thing. We know. The rainbow flag is a thing.
Yeah.
All you need to do is put the tiniest little sticker on the back of your van of not particularly the flag, just a rainbow.
Okay.
Then you'll know.
That's like a flare.
Yeah.
That one.
It can be.
We get to talk about business now, mate, because I feel like we've skirted around that. But I need to go to the toilet myself, so I'm going to call another break right here. That's a good place to pause a moment and say a big thank you to this episode's sponsors, Q1. Q1 offer premium masking solutions, the perfect choice for the professional that demands perfection. Q1 tapes deliver clean, sharp lines every single time. They're designed for superior adhesion and easy removal, leaving no adhesive residue. In addition to the tapes, Q1 offer a whole range of surface protection. Using Q1, your projects look professional and the results speak for themselves. Available in most stores and online at q1tapes.com. The Talking Tradesman would like to offer our sincere thanks to Q1 for offering your support to raise mental health awareness and supporting the podcast from day one. I can speak personally, and I say that I use Q1 in my business on every project. With that said, let's get back to the episode. And we're back again. Right, mate, in this I guess the final segment of what will be the podcast, let's have a chat about business and your business. So Matt Willis, painters and decorators, painter and decorator, painting and decorating.
I've said it all before, but I say now Matt Willis Interiors. That's my handle on most stuff.
Have you stopped doing exteriors?
I hate it with an absolute passion.
So have I. Did you used to do them?
I've done the odd few, used to.
Yeah.
I hated them, start to finish, everything about it. Hate them.
Okay.
I now occasionally pick the odd outside job. In fact, I'm doing a front door next week because it's a nice one and I want to do it.
Yeah.
But I will only do the ones I want to do, and if it's on ground level.
Yeah. I did them for years, mate. Only stopped about 4 years ago. I don't actually mind working outside, and I don't mind the work. It's the weather. It's just cost me so much.
And that's 90% of the reason why I stopped. Was because of that. You book sorry, I've interrupted you, but you book in an exterior for July, August thinking that's pretty safe.
Yeah.
Comes to the day, pissing down, can't do it. That's not the problem. The problem is you've then got to try and fill your days, which means bumping somebody else on. It can have an effect for 6 months in your diary.
Easy.
I can't afford to have that kind of faff, quite frankly. So
I must admit, I don't know. A couple of things I think have changed. One, I do believe that the weather was more predictable because years ago I used to book in summer work and I would base an exterior on doing 4 out of 5 days in a week. And that used to see me through pretty well.
Okay.
But now you can lose weeks on end. Yeah. You really can. And I don't, the problem I've had is I book maybe 4 or 5 months in advance, maybe 6 months in advance. So like you quite rightly said, you book into August, it rains that week, so you have to bring another job in. So you start that job, and 2 days into that job, the sun comes out.
Yeah.
Then the customer from the exterior's on the phone going, sun's out, why aren't you here?
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, well, I've just started a lounge now. I can't just walk away.
Yeah.
Then you get the phone call, or you finish the lounge. You're like, look, I'll get back as soon as I've done this one. Then it's raining again.
Yeah, I know. Oh,
So
it's an absolute nightmare.
and fair play to everyone that does them.
Mm-hmm.
There's money to be earned there. I'm not knocking them. It's just not for my bit. I got to a point where, fortunately, I was turning. I say fortunately, but unfortunately, I was turning away so much interior work for not guaranteed exterior work.
Exactly. Why would you do that?
So I'm the same, mate. We've stopped. So I know it was 4 years ago because I took the signage off my van yesterday.
Okay,
That still stated interiors and exteriors.
Right, okay.
So the new van will just state
That's kind of where Matt Willis interiors came from, because I want to make it clear.
Yeah.
Don't even ask me.
That's me to get up a ladder. Yeah, no, it's fair, mate. It really is. So how did that all come about then, Matt? So you've gone through, you work for the courts, clerk of the courts. Well, what point did you, because that's a hell of a
I can tell you exactly. It's very clear. I can tell you exactly how it happened. So Glenn, my very, very good friend, who I used to live with, his father owned a property company. He's since passed away recently, actually, so that's fallen to him. And Glenn's job, he was always a director of the company, but his main job was to go into the properties in between lets and turn them around with whatever they needed.
Okay.
He would rarely do work himself because he wasn't skilled in certain areas, but he always did the decorating, always done it. And he had this particular house come. I was totally bored at work. It was my time to go. So he said, I've got this house coming up and I've not got much time. Do you fancy giving me a hand? So I said, yeah, fine. So I took 2 days annual leave from work to go and help him on this house. And I was there half a day. And no disrespect to Glenn, because I love him and he's a very good friend, but I thought, I can do much better than you're doing. And he is very good at decorating. Don't get me wrong. He does a couple of days a week for me.
Oh, okay.
Has for a long time, and he's fantastic. But I just thought I could do this in a better order. I could do this with maybe different products. I also really enjoyed what I was doing. So I thought, it's time for me to leave the civil service. Pardon me. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. So I thought, I've done this at college. Why not give it a go? So when I left work, they had 3 rounds of redundant. It was a long time ago, 12, 13 years ago. It was when the coalition government came in with the Lib Dems and the Conservatives. They made a lot of redundancies within the civil service. And there was going to be 3 rounds within the court service. So I was like, I'm having a bit of that. So first round came, applied, accepted. I thought, brilliant, I'm going. He had to sign a form and send it back. And then I thought, actually, don't be silly. I'm about to turn 30. There's a lot of perks that come with the civil service. Had lots of annual leave, flexi time, loads of stuff. I thought, do I want to really jack all this in for something that may not take off, may not work, may not enjoy it, may not do well? What am I doing? So I sent the form back and said, thanks, but no thanks. 6 months later, I thought, actually, I want to do this. So the second round came, applied, thinking, well, I got it the first time. And I'd gone just over 11 years, which meant they had to pay me that little bit more. But it took them over a certain threshold of redundancy payment.
Okay.
So they refused me. And I was like, fuck, what have I done? I should have taken it the first time. 6 months later, third and final round came. And I thought, well, if it don't get it now, I'm not. Because I couldn't afford to leave otherwise. And I was PA to director then. So I had a quiet word. And I said, I need to go on this round. The final one, I've got to go. If I don't go, I don't know what I'm going to do. Anyway, the third one came and I got it and I left. So I bought it wasn't even a van. It was a Fiesta. It was awful. Put some signage on it. Put the word out to a few mates. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Got a few jobs. And for this first 6 months, I was probably doing 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a week. One of the first jobs was that one I was telling you about, where the decorator tried it on with the wife. And about a year in, I then bought a little Astra van. And I mean, when I started, I was ridiculous. I don't know what I was thinking. I had a Henry Hoover, some sandpaper, few cheap Harris brushes from B&M. I mean, I was everything I never want to be right now.
Yeah.
It was,
mate, we all
looking
started
back,
yeah.
but you have to. And I made some absolute pig's fucking ears of jobs. I made some horrendous mistakes, some massive mistakes. But you have to learn. You have to learn, and you have to do all those things to get to, sounds big-headed, but where I am now. And I'm quite respected in what I do, and a little bit sought after in what I do. And
you do some quality
people
work,
will
mate.
wait for me, which is brilliant, and I'm happy for it.
Yeah.
It's great. So, yeah, it's been a very, very long, I hate the word journey, but it has been a long journey. But it's been great, and I've loved it, and I do love it, and that's why I do what I do, because I do love it. My body doesn't love it. My body hates it. My knees, my shoulders, my arms, my everything about me is more or less buggered, as you know, a lot of people our age are. But I'll do it for as long as I can, because I really do enjoy it.
That's well, mate. If you enjoy what you do for a living, then you're winning for one. But I mean, to re-emphasise there, you do some quality work, mate. I've followed you on socials for a while, and you are one of the better, shall I say, decorators out there on socials. Quality work's spot on, mate. So
I'm not good at taking good things, but thank you.
The mistakes have obviously paid off.
Oh yeah,
but it's really, that is a really good point to make, though, because in a world where Instagram shows all the highlights,
doesn't it?
You make your biggest leaps in ability, in skill, in learning by fucking up.
Yeah,
that is the
and
best.
You have to fuck up.
You have to. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they're the only way you're going to learn.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Instagram is fantastic. We all use it. It's probably why we're listening to this now. It's brilliant. We all love it. There are so many pitfalls, though, which do annoy me sometimes, where you get a lot of people just showing the good stuff. I try where I can to show. Yesterday, for example, I wallpapered a little loo, and the finished pictures looked brilliant. They looked really smart. But when I finished it, I was sweating. I looked awful. I was sweating because there was no window in there. It was a really hot day. There was shit everywhere. This poor lady's house. I was thinking, oh my God, I've got to tidy up. And I took a photo, and I did a slide which said Instagram, which was great. And then the reality, and that's what it is. And it's not just physical things on site. We do have the reality of, you know, people that we don't particularly maybe get on with looking at our stuff. And there is a lot of stuff that is not great. The people that annoy me are the ones that put perfect stuff on all the time. And I look at stuff and I think, you didn't have a plain sail to get to that perfection there. I know you didn't.
Yeah.
And don't make out you did.
Yeah.
Because you didn't.
See, I'm genuinely, I'm on, like, I can see both sides of the story with it, because I agree that showing reality is valuable. Valuable to other people in the trade. But I also see that, like, for example, my decorating Instagram, I have always treated as a portfolio.
Mine too.
That's there for my customers. That's there to win me work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do I want to show any mistakes on there? Maybe not.
No, absolutely.
Maybe not. I believe the stories are okay for that, because it has a different vibe to it. That's like day in the life of, here's a problem, here's how I overcame it, here's an issue, but here's me fixing it.
My grid is the same. My grid will show you examples of what I can do.
Yeah.
How we can start with this and we can end up over there. I use it for just the same stories I use for a little bit different sometimes. I
think the key thing is experience, Matt, isn't it? Because when you're experienced and you've got the years behind you, I've got the years behind you, I can look at, you know, an example of a post that's on somebody's Instagram and think, looks amazing, but I bet you've gone through some crap to get there. But I think it's maybe some of the newer people into the trade that are in their first year or two that look and think, oh my God, I'm completely overwhelmed because that is amazing. How do I get there?
Yeah.
And there's just that, isn't there? The curtain that the experienced decorators or tradespeople will know is there. We all know it's there. But I guess people new and referencing social media as a start point could look very daunting.
And it's a fantastic tool. I wish that when I first started, I would have had Instagram.
Oh, gotcha.
Because the things that I've learned from other decorators and other trades
100%.
is insane.
Yeah.
I learn literally, hand on heart, every day I learn something from all of the people that we follow. And if I'd have had that when I first started, I would have come on a lot quicker.
Yeah, mate.
Than I did.
100%. I'll be honest. Prior to getting social media was entirely my wife's fault. So I had a bit of an aversion to social media, if I'm honest, up until I met Ange. But she said to me, she's like, "Why aren't you on social?" Because when I met her, I didn't even have a Facebook account, which should have been a red flag, really. Like, who's this geezer here? But I didn't have Facebook, I didn't have Instagram, none of it. And she said to me, she's like, "Not even for your business?" I was like, "No." She was like, "You're missing a trick." So I started off with business account. And anyway, no regrets, no looking back. But prior to that, I had reached, I guess, a level in my local area where I thought I was the bee's knees, and didn't think I needed to do anything else. Didn't think I needed to invest or improve because in my local area, I felt I was at the top of my game. Then I got onto Instagram and started following certain accounts on Instagram and thought,
I know.
there's levels here.
I know.
Where I thought I was here at the top,
absolutely,
I'm pegs down from
absolutely, that. I'm the same.
But what it's done, though, it has inspired me to kick on and go, well, okay, that's better than what I can do. How have they done it? And I wasn't averse to sending out a message going, mate, what did you use on that? How did you do that? And 100%, where I am now is levels above where I was. And it's all thanks to social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
And pushing myself to be at the top end of things and achieve the finishes that some of the decorators I was seeing on there. So it's been great for me and my business.
Yeah, mine too. I absolutely agree. Brilliant. Don't know what I'd do without it. And from a social point of view, we work alone most of the time. All of us do. It's like having a friend sometimes at work.
Definitely, mate.
If you're having a low point, whether that can be in your head with something nothing to do with work or to do with work, all you need to do is take a break, have a little scroll, and you'll see that there's other people going through similar stuff all over the country, all over the world, and you're not alone. It helps for that too.
Matt, genuinely, mate, I have made friends through social media. And I've got a great group of friends that I grew up with, not knocking them, but they're not all in the trades.
Absolutely.
And there's that thing where somebody that does what you do just understand them. You know, I can say to you, "Oh, mate, this happened today," and I know you'll get it. Whereas some of my friends that are in a totally different background would look at me like, "I ain't got a clue what you're saying, mate." You know, so. I mean, for example, after we record today, I'm actually off down to Milton Keynes. To
Kev's birthday.
Yeah, Kev's birthday. Okay. So, but again, met entirely through social media.
Me down the M1.
More than likely. Yeah, well, I've got to go and pick Ange up first. So there's getting ready involved, Matt. So I might not be that close behind you. But again, I referenced going up to the decorator show in Bolton a few weeks ago. The amount of people that I met there, went out for a drink on the evening, and they are people that have gone from being social media acquaintances to, you know, a good handful now that I would refer to as a friend. So it's definitely got a purpose.
Absolutely, it has. Yeah, it has.
Yeah. It's, again, I mean, as you say, it's a relatively new development in the overall scheme of things.
No, it is. It is in the scheme of things. It is, but it's great. I don't know what I'd do without it.
To pull back a little bit on something you said there, because you said about the body and that, and you'll do it as long as you can.
You're going to ask me if I've got an exit plan, aren't you?
To that effect, mate. Yeah, like, have you considered 10 years' time or 15 years' time?
Yes and no. It's not something I think about much. And that's not specifically to a changing career. That's more because a lot of my thought processes go back to losing Jason, I don't look that far ahead anyway, regardless, because it stresses me out too much. I will have to do something.
Yeah,
I know that, because I know my knees won't last forever. There are a few things that I kind of have in my head from time to time, and I do go back to those things. I don't know if I'm certainly not ready to do it yet at all.
No.
But yeah, I will have to do so. I cannot be doing this when I'm 50-ish, which ain't long.
I've got the same thing in my mind, mate.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I've set the benchmark of 50.
Yeah.
To not be, not necessarily not in the business, but not working on the tools like I currently do.
Yeah.
Even if it was cutting down the days.
Yeah.
But I had two great examples set for me in that my grandfather and my father were both decorators. My granddad, again, wore his body down doing it, but got to the point where he stepped out and still enjoyed his life. My dad, he had it a little bit different. Like, he didn't have the plan, the exit plan, and had to work. He only retired 3-4 years ago. But again, various health problems that made it very difficult to work. And if I'm honest, I looked at that and I thought, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want to, me speaking for myself, I don't want to work till I wear myself out to step out. I would rather step out prior to completely fucking my knees and my shoulders.
That's what I would like to do. Yeah, I would like to do exactly that.
Could you see yourself, because you work on your own at the moment, with the exception of Glenn a couple of days?
Glenn works for me a couple of days, yeah.
Could you see yourself taking people on?
I'm asked that frequently. At least once a week somebody says that to me.
Well, I've ticked that box for this week then.
I've never wanted, I don't want to. I have a few issues with it. I don't want the paperwork headache, although I probably wouldn't deal with it, my accountant would. But anyway, I am my own USP, and I don't want to put somebody in a house to do something, because that job has always got my name on it. And they could do a better job than I would do, but it's still got my name on it. And, the way they talk to a customer has got my name on it. Everything about it, if it's done through me, I don't want to be rich. I don't want to be a millionaire. And let's face it, doing what we do, that's never going to happen. We will earn a good living, and I'm happy with the money that I earn, but I have no massive aspirations. I never have to be massive. As long as I can fund myself, have a couple, probably more than a couple of holidays, because I do like a holiday. As long as I can do all of that, I'm happy.
That's fair, mate.
I'm happy.
That's fair. My personal findings within it, because I've gone through stages of having a load of lads work for me. I've got to, I guess, what I would describe as a big, small business at times, where I had like 6 lads on.
Yeah, that's
was a big, small that's business. Quite a lot. My personal findings are, if you're going to expand, the demographic of work has to be correct.
Absolutely.
Working in the domestic market, and certainly high-end domestic, is very difficult.
You can't just put anybody into somebody's home.
I personally haven't found the answer to that one. Right? So when I've had teams of lads on, we've done commercial work, or we've done insurance work, or we've done contracting work. So it's, in the nicest way possible, the quality does not have to be to the level that I work on a private basis. And that is easier to grow a team, because bigger jobs, commercial jobs, they just want the job done. It's not about we want exceptional quality. It's they want the job done. And you can see that, like, I mean, decorator's curse, mate. You go out for a meal, you go to a hotel, you go and you look around and you're like, oh my God, how has they got away with this? I'm in a 5-star hotel. And
I know.
That's why.
I know.
That's why. Because it's about getting it done. It's not about everything being A1.
Exactly.
So the growth is there, but then it steps you out of... So if you've got a passion for what you do, would you still have that passion to do a lower level of work and just be in it purely for the money and the profit? So I've dabbled in both. I don't know the answer. I don't.
I know. One thing that, if I was going to cut down and maybe do a day a week or something, which is not for a lot. That's like retirement. But I'd maybe like to do just wallpapering.
Yeah.
And not, for major profit. It'd be because I like doing it. It's a less messy job, or it can be a less messy job. You don't come home covered in dust and paint and shit like we do. Maybe that's something alongside other stuff. Yeah, I'm certainly not ready yet.
It'll be on you before you know it, mate. That's the problem.
Well, I never thought I'd be 40. I never thought. I remember my mum and dad my mum and dad both had 40th birthday parties. And I remember being a child thinking, I'll never be 40.
How old is that?
Yeah. And now I'm like, I'm beyond that.
Yeah.
So,
mate, I've got 2 weeks today.
Oh, you're lucky.
The big one.
You are lucky. You are so lucky.
Mate. Yeah, but all I'm looking back and thinking 30 to 40 seems to have gone.
Yeah, I know.
Click of a
fingers. I know.
So I'm imagining 40 to 50 will be the same. So I personally, admittedly, am struggling to an extent with the thought of turning 40, because I've always had it in my head that's halfway.
I know. It ain't for me. It is not halfway for me. That's 2/3 for me.
Right. I don't know why, but quality of life probably is 2/3. So I do feel like I've got this metaphorical clock ticking away now.
Yeah.
Of, mate, if you're going to change something, it's got to be.
Yeah.
And I love the trade. I love what I'm doing. I don't want to get out of what I'm doing yet, but I'm very aware of my body. And I also think, I don't know if running the business as a shirt and trousers kind of position and just managing lads, I don't know if that would do it for me.
I don't think it would for me, because I would go to site, I'd go to a house and I'd see what's happening and I'd think, right, get my shorts on, I need to be
exactly that.
I need to just smooth that bit of cork down there, because that's not, spot on.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
It's a tough one. And that's why I sort of started studying psychology and all going that way, because to me, my plan B will be something different. Counselling, psychology, therapy. That's where I'm leaning towards, hence this whole journey that I'm going on. That's where my head, I don't know where it's going. I don't know where it'll take me, but I'm very conscious of it.
Yeah, we all are.
The question, Matt, that I've asked a lot of people, not everyone, because I forget now and again, but I've remembered, so I'm going to ask you. The purpose of the podcast being to raise mental health awareness in construction, and the fact that construction is so adversely affected, and not only construction, but within the demographic of construction, painters, decorators and plasterers are the worst affected trades for male suicide rates. What are your thoughts on why that is, why construction is so bad?
This will be, sorry, but it's a repetitive answer. There are the top three. One, we work on our own. It has to be. We're in our own heads all day. Well, I say we work on our own. Most of us work on our own. And we're in our own heads all day with whether that's work or personal stuff. We're in our heads all day long, and we don't talk. When I worked in the civil service, it was an office job. I was in an open plan office, and we talked to each other all day long about loads of stuff. We went out to lunch and we talked more in depth because we were out of the office and in a private. You just do in that kind of atmosphere. Doing what we do now, we're on our own. That's probably the biggest thing. Another thing, again, people have said it so much, but it's true and it's right, that because we're self-employed and we work on our own, we have a massive pressure of, when's the next job coming from? How are we going to feed the family? How are we going to pay for this, pay for that, pay the other? We've got, I don't want to say, get the violins out. And I love what I do and I wouldn't change it. But there is so much on our plate. Not only have we got to go to work and do the job, there's so much when you get home. There's so much to do. So much to do. I leave jobs at, an early day for me would be 3:30, 4. And I might have started at 7 or 8. So actually, that's a normal full day. And then customers will say to me, oh, nice early day for you now. Fuck off, is it? I've got to go and look at 3 jobs on the way home because I don't want to do it at the weekend. I've then got to go home and write them up. there's just so much you have to do. There's so much.
Yeah.
And it can get on top of you.
Mm.
I think a lot of people that are in trades have some demons about them. That may be why they've fallen into this kind of work. I don't know.
Mm.
That's something that could be going on in their head. There is
that conversation,
unspoken.
yeah, which is it the job or is it the people that the job attracts that have that issue in terms of being more susceptible to mental health and suicide? Or is it a condition of the job that pushes you into that? Or is it a spiral of both?
I think it can be a 50-50 both. I really do.
Yeah, it's frightening, mate. It is frightening because it's all on an upward trajectory as well.
And I didn't know the stats at all. I had no idea about the stats until you started doing what you do with this.
Yeah.
No idea at all. And I was like, fuck, really?
I'll be honest, mate, neither did I.
Didn't know.
Neither did I. It was working at Samaritans that started it for me. And there's in the office there's certain statistics on the board about suicide. And I thought, okay, but I wonder how many of them. And then digging and trying to find up-to-date statistics, mate, it's not easy. So it's so...
But it should be. That's part of the problem, isn't it? It should be easy.
Yeah. Well, the statistics that we're quoting at the moment, so, 3 in 4 suicides are men, 4 times more likely to take their own life in construction. They're figures from like 21, 22. So, and that's considered new. So we're a good 2-3 years probably behind real relevant statistics. And within those statistics are a lot that don't actually get reported in the correct categories. So the whole 4 times more likely, it's probably more, to be honest. And the figures where they talk about on average at the moment, there's 2 men in construction that take their own lives daily. It's probably more, but it's just not reported correctly. So yeah, it's a real severe problem, which is the whole driving force behind doing this. And in credit, mate, it's guests like you and everyone that's come before you sitting here talking about these things that hopefully are moving the needle in the right direction to get other people talking.
Yeah. And whatever that might be about, you can really talk about anything, whatever it is in your head that you need to get out, anything at all.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah. There's a huge benefit to talking. And if you haven't tried, if you sat there skeptical, if you haven't tried it, just try it and see if you feel better afterwards. I can pretty much guarantee you will.
And I've had no great, shocking life. I've just done life up to now, and things have happened, and whether they're good or bad, they've happened. But it's made me, it's made me have a life, and I thought maybe that you had to come here with some kind of shocking story. You don't at all. And if there is, like I say, I really am conscious of banging on about the gay card. I don't want to come across that way. But if there is anybody who would like to chat about that, then, I'm happy to do so.
On that point, mate.
And that can be you, that could be not you necessarily personally. If you've got a child, a brother, a relative, a friend or whatever, I've got to the age now where you can't offend me. You're not going to say anything that's going to piss me off.
Not only, mate, what you're saying is commendable, though. You're sat there putting that out there because you're saying if there's anyone that's struggling and you can help, and give me a shout. So fair play to you and everyone else that's done the same. And that's the reason you're sat here today, was because coming and talking about your story could potentially help somebody, and I'm sure it will, or it will at least connect with people out there.
Good.
On that subject, though, Matt, if people were to want to reach out and speak to you, where would they do it?
Instagram, Matt Willis Interiors. That's the one I check the most. But I'm happy to, if somebody does really want to talk properly, I'm happy to, share my number and things, but not live. Well, as I always do, I'll put Matt's details in the episode description. So I'll link his Instagram profile. You can make initial contact through there. And also just go give Matt a follow anyway, because he's a top bloke, and go and give him a follow on his socials, and we'll keep building this community that's there. As we sort of come to the end of things, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to
discuss at all? I don't want to miss anything.
Well, I had a 2-hour drive up here, and it was going through my head. Oh, I'll say this, I'll say that, I'll say the other. I don't know if I've said any of it. I don't know if I've said some of it or none of it. So, no, thank you.
All right, mate. No, I appreciate that. It's the beauty of what I try and do is just to try and keep it organic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's, let's be honest, mate, if I were to try and sit down, if anyone said to me, Russ, sit down, tell me your life story in 2 hours, 3 hours.
No.
Like, come on, man, give me a week at least. You know, how do you condense a life's experiences into a few hours?
Yeah.
So, but it's been a pleasure, mate. It's been a pleasure having you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been of interest. It's a great, you know, we've covered an angle that I haven't covered before. Okay. So always grateful for that, mate. Massive thank you for your time. And before I forget, Matt is going to be the first person to take away the new guest merchandise. In fact, I'm going to give it to him now. In fact.
Thank you very much.
So we have the new, I'm lost for words.
Peach?
Essential. Yeah. No, I remember who gave me. Funky Peach, Matt. I remember them. It's, so this stuff is unique to guests of the podcast. This is not for sale like the merchandise that you can find on www.thetalkingtradesman.co.uk. So the merch that me and Matt are sporting, you can buy that. This stuff, you have to come on the podcast. So this is guest. What is the word I'm looking for?
Merchandise. Guest merchandise.
Not merch. No, like, you know, unique. What is it? The word. I'm fucking having a complete mind blank here.
Bespoke?
No. I'll remember after we've recorded. Means you can only get it here. Give me a word for that, Matt.
It's exclusive.
Exclusive.
This room.
We'll take exclusive. This is guest exclusive. So,
and it feels, may I just say, very good.
Big thank you to the guys and girls at the Funky Peach for supplying our guests with the new guest merchandise, which, as Matt is kindly flicking through here, all printed and organised for the guests of the podcast. So massive thank you to you guys. It's people like you and our fantastic sponsors, Zinza, Q1. You guys are what is enabling the podcast to keep going and hopefully keep growing as well. So massive thank you to you guys. And I hope you enjoy your new merch, Matt.
Thank you very much.
That you haven't had to pay for. Other than giving up 4 hours of your time and all the rest. In fact, more than that by the time you get home. But Matt, it's been a massive pleasure. Anything you want to end on?
Thank you. Thank him for doing all of this.
Always a pleasure. Until next time.